Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by PrizePicks. Got a nice little 6-game slate tonight to play some NBA DFS, and we got the perfect guy here to help us break this one down. Adam, Should My Money Scherer. Adam, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty well. Looking forward to talking about this slate. I think it's a really interesting one to talk about since we have, several trades that have affected teams. We have a lot of stuff later on in the night that we don't really know how it's going to go. So excited to break this one down.
Yeah, this one's interesting. I have a feeling we might get some news. I just saw a retweet from our Awesemo NBA account. Maurice Harkless is doubtful tonight. That changes everything. So we got to go back to the drawing board, but we're going to take it game by game here. Before we get into the games, guys, if you could hit that like button, that gives us that positive feedback we need. So also, we got a lot of free stuff going on Awesemo.com today. We got NBA main slate ownership projections for tonight's slate, the PGA Top Golfers tool for the Waste Management Open, some big contest there. Adam, I know you had a big takedown a couple of weeks ago, so it's always fun to be able to win. You won like 150K, right?
Yeah, like 175 because I won 2 tournaments. But yeah, always fun to win in sports that you don't expect to necessarily win in.
That's the whole point. So it's always good to get another sweat. They got 200K first this week, so that'll be fun. The NHL rankings are free tonight as well. And make sure to check out our podcast giveaway. I'll have more details for that later. Let's start with the games here. San Antonio at Cleveland. Cleveland's 5.5-point favorite. San Antonio, they haven't really done a ton aside from so they got Tomas Satoransky on the squad right now. Just to refresh my memory here, what was the trade?
Which trade?
The Spurs. They I think it was like a 3-team trade or something.
Yeah, they gave up Hernan Gomez. I don't even remember. It wasn't anything that mattered.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't think Satoransky is playing tonight, but might have to look up for more information there. I don't think it matters a ton. But okay, so we got Lonnie Walker and Trey Jones. They were questionable earlier. Now looks like they're in on the latest injury report. So pretty much a full squad for San Antonio. Are you seeing anything pop out as far as options tonight?
I wouldn't say anything that really stands out, in the context of the entire slate. I think that it's kind of just what we normally see when the Spurs are at full strength or close to it. You can always make a pretty strong case for DeJounte Murray. You can always get to Jakob Poeltl and Derek White. But I think they're pretty much correctly priced. They have a difficult matchup against Cleveland, only a 106 implied total for San Antonio. And the salaries are just where they should be. DeJounte Murray's around a 1.4 fantasy point per minute guy, likely to play 36 minutes or so, but he's 10,600 in a tough spot. Poeltl's at 7,500 on DraftKings. White's at 6,100. I think that getting to some of those guys in tournaments is fine, but I don't really see anything here that I plan on building around.
Agreed. Yeah, DeJounte Murray, he's always interesting. However, the price tag's pretty high, and then the opportunity cost tonight could be pretty high because you got all these late questionables. So I'm kind of wondering if do we want to prioritize maybe Anthony Davis at that price point where if Westbrook and LeBron sat, that could be big? Or I know there's a ton of games that have questionables. So how does DeJounte Murray stack up among those top priced options?
Yeah, and it's not even just the questionables either. Like chances are, something's going to open up in those late games with how many guys are questionable. But you have the Charlotte game where they're playing with six guys essentially. Toronto always plays with like six guys. So even on those teams that we're not waiting on news. There's opportunity cost there as well. So, and even at the top, like, you mentioned Anthony Davis obviously looks better if LeBron sits, but he looks good one way or the other. Same goes for LeBron if he plays. Steph Curry, I have some thoughts on him that we can get into when we get to that game, but I think he's, a comparable option to Murray as well. So I think that, at relatively low ownership, he's the kind of guy that I'll mix into a lineup just to get a low-owned guy that has a massive ceiling, but I just don't really see him as a priority on this slate.
Agreed. Yeah. What about the other Spurs starters? I mean, you got Derek White, Doug McDermott. It seems like he didn't really get many minutes last game, but yeah, I guess Derek White seems like maybe the best price guy, and then Vassell off the bench. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, White, I think relative to salary, all of Murray, Pirtle, and White look about the same to me. White probably the easiest to get to just because he does have point guard and shooting guard eligibility, and he is the cheapest of the three. Should play around 32 minutes or so, has a 20.5% usage rate in the games that he's played with DeJounte Murray this year, 23.2% assist percentage in those games. So you're expecting, around the fantasy point per minute, maybe a little bit less in this matchup. So just looks like a reasonable secondary option, I think.
Nice. On the Cleveland side, they made a big trade to go out and get Karis LeVert. It seems like they didn't have to give away very much there. So it seems like he's going to slide into the starting lineup tonight. They did announce he is available. Darius Garland, he's questionable technically, but he said he's going to play. They said they got to test him in pregame warmups, so there's some chance that changes, but pretty much a full house for Cleveland tonight. You seeing anything?
So I think the addition of LeVert, it's kind of scary from a DFS standpoint because we don't know exactly how it's going to play out. I think you can kind of use like Colin Sexton as a proxy. In the 9 games that Garland's played with Sexton this year, he's only averaged 0.97 DraftKings points per minute, only has about a 22% usage rate. Especially in LeVert's first game here, I think there's a pretty good chance that Garland doesn't take that big of a step back in terms of his opportunities, but LeVert does definitely, threaten the production that we've gotten from Garland. The thing that's interesting to me though is that his salary did drop a little bit to 8,400, and you do get a fast-paced San Antonio team. So I don't mind Garland in tournaments, but overall, I think this is another team that's just really difficult to get to much of because they've been shorthanded for a while. So, like for example, Kevin Love's salary is increased. I think he probably plays fewer minutes tonight than he has been recently. Karis LeVert's extremely expensive. I can't bring myself to get there. Allen and Mobley are, always decent options, but I don't think they really stand out. So I think Cleveland's kind of similar to San Antonio where, if you're going to get to some Garland, Allen, Mobley, any of those guys are fine, but there's just nothing that I plan on building around.
Yeah, I agree. There's not really anything like drawing me to the Cavs either. Garland also, he's been out 4 games. So that's kind of that spot where it's like, dang, I don't feel like 100% confident he'd even get the minutes he normally gets anyway. But it is a lower back injury, so not generally the worst for minutes coming back. Now let's go. I forgot to mention on the Spurs, Zach Collins is the backup center. It seems like in the last games, but they have Jock Landale back. I don't think that makes much of a difference from a DFS perspective, but kind of interesting to see Zach Collins finally back from injury. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what they do with the backup center rotation just because Landale had been out. I don't know if Landale just DNPs now. I don't know if maybe they play one of them at the 4 a little bit, especially against a bigger Cleveland team. But from a DFS standpoint, I don't really care. It's just more so I'm interested for, kind of just future knowledge just to see what they do there.
Good. Now, Chicago at Charlotte, this one's pretty close to a pick 'em. Really high over-under of 236.5. So this one could be pretty good for fantasy purposes. The big news on Chicago is Ayo Dosunmu is out tonight. So I think the first guy we got to look at is Kobe White. He should be getting some big minutes tonight. Do you see any reason why Kobe White shouldn't be a priority?
No, I think he looks good at 5,100. The only like negative thing I guess that I have to say about White is that I think everyone should be aware that you're not talking about last year's Kobe White where he's going to step in and have like a mid-20s usage rate. He's still playing alongside Vooch, Levine, DeRozan, but at 5,100 in a really good matchup against Charlotte, just being on the floor for what I assume is going to be low to mid 30s in minutes is enough to make him look like a strong option at 5,100.
Agreed. Yeah, he looks like a very solid option. And then if we go back about 10 games ago, he was playing without oh sorry, I'm misquoting this. It looks like well, that's when Lonzo Ball was out. He was getting that 29 or 30 mid 30s minutes per game. So it's nothing we haven't seen before. And with Dosunmu out, I feel pretty confident he's going to be in those mid 30s. What about the rest of the Bulls? I assume Dosunmu being out doesn't really affect much as far as rates. So is there anyone else standing out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the only spot where I expect it to have an impact is I think you see the assist numbers for DeRozan and potentially Levine go up a little bit, just because Dosunmu has played a really big role recently as a facilitator. But overall, it's more so just I like DeRozan, Vooch, and Levine because they're going to play a lot of minutes. They're in a really good matchup. I don't think we have. I'm trying to refresh ownership right now, but I don't think we have them projected for that much ownership either, which is interesting. And like I understand why, because you have very popular guys on Charlotte on the other side. You have just so many good spots to get to, but you're talking about one of the most favorable matchups you can get, and probably getting 36 plus minutes from DeRozan and Levine, probably getting 35 or 36 from Vooch. So I do like those guys quite a bit in tournaments.
Nice. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. DeRozan 9,600, like I'm like, dang, that's high, but it seems like it's almost the right price for him. Maybe a little bit high, but Levine also he came back from a couple of games absence, played big minutes last game, so no worries there. Now on the Charlotte side, I feel like Charlotte's one of the teams that we're really targeting tonight. Now, one of the things that we got to think of, so Gordon Hayward only played 6 minutes last game after aggravating his injury. So I think that in the second half, Kelly Oubre got the start in the second half, and then he ended up playing, let's see, 38 minutes. I've seen some people project that Washington will be starting over Oubre, but I usually go with that second half starter in the case of injury. So if Oubre gets a start, he looks like a really solid value at 5,600. So who are you projecting to start, and who are your priorities on this Hornets team?
Yeah, I'm with you as far as assuming that Oubre is going to start since he did start the second half. As far as priorities, kind of like the entire team, because one thing we've seen this year when Charlotte has been shorthanded is James Borrego typically condenses his rotation and he just plays his normal guys a bunch more minutes. He's not one of these coaches like Steve Nash that just or Steve Kerr that just, grab somebody off the end of the bench and says, oh, now you're going to go play 12 minutes and, you're going to go play 12 minutes and starts adding guys to the rotation. Then you also don't have Cody Martin. You don't have McDaniels. So even if you say Nick Richards plays 12 minutes or something, and if Smith plays like 14, there's just so many minutes to go around for the main six guys here. And their price tags are very reasonable. Like you're likely to get 38 minutes or so from LaMelo. That's someone that averages 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. He's only 8,800, makes him look fantastic. Bridges and Rozier, I think, are likely to give you around 40 minutes apiece. They both are fairly priced. If Oubre starts, I think 36 minutes or so is reasonable. You do have to keep in mind that his usage drops a bit playing with LaMelo, as you would expect, but he's still essentially priced to play 28 to 30 minutes. So if he's starting, he's going to look good. PJ Washington, even assuming he comes off the bench, probably still getting around 30 minutes or so. So all five of those guys, I think, look great. Mason Plumlee is, I think, fine, but I think he is on a different tier than those other five.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. It seems like Mason Plumlee, he's been kind of in that 30-minute range already. So he's pretty much priced for it. And I don't know if he's going to really benefit. It's not like there are centers out for Charlotte. So he seems like the lowest priority to me as well. Washington, the price is right for him, and he did play 30 minutes last game. So if we assume a similar rotation, that looks really good. And then LaMelo Ball, I I got totally owned like last week because so he played like 40 minutes a game for a while. And then like the day I play him at 50% ownership, he played 21 and got benched. So I'm sure a lot of us are still reeling from that, but it seems like with no Cody Martin or Hayward or McDaniels, no Boo Knight, seems like LaMelo has to get the minutes now. Like, or does he?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like even last game, Ish Smith played a total of 8 minutes. I don't think you necessarily have to, assume that Ish is only playing 8 minutes. But kind of like I said before, even if you say Ish Smith plays, call it 14 minutes, and say Nick Richards is in the rotation, which isn't necessarily even a given, you can still very easily find 38 minutes or so for LaMelo Ball, and he would look great. Like you don't need him to play 44 minutes. He certainly could. Like it's in the range of outcomes. But even if you assume something like 37 or 38, he looks like one of the most mispriced guys on the slate.
Yeah, something that I found encouraging the last game is that they summed up to more than 48 minutes. LaMelo played 44 and Ish played 8. So a lot of games we'd seen them kind of come in and out for one another, but that wasn't the case last game. So I feel encouraged that Ball will see big minutes even with Smith in the rotation here. And then Rozier, he also looks really good. I mean, he's been getting about as many minutes as anyone in the league recently. So he's a good option. And Miles Bridges, I'd say it's hard for him to play many more minutes, so it doesn't look like he's getting a huge bump here. But how are you handling Rozier and Bridges?
Yeah, I mean, with Bridges, I think it kind of just like solidifies those minutes. Like typically when I look at Charlotte, if I'm projecting like Ball for, let's say, 35 or 36 minutes, then I think you're giving Bridges like 37, 38. So here I think it's fair to think that, like if LaMelo is playing 38, Bridges probably plays like 40. And so I still think he looks good here. I don't think he's on quite the same level as LaMelo since he doesn't produce at the same rate. But you're still talking about a point per minute guy in a good matchup that is likely to at least approach 40 minutes. So him and Rozier both are in that category where they're just. I think they at least pick up a couple of additional minutes, and then you also have to keep in mind that it is a pretty favorable matchup against the Bulls minus Lonzo and minus Caruso and those guys. So I like both of them a lot as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the big question is how many guys on the Hornets are you willing to roster in one lineup? Because you got 6 guys that are all or 5 guys that are positive values. Mason Plumlee, I'd say, is kind of neutral. So if you just go out and crunch and fancy cruncher, then you're going to get a lot of Hornets. So how are you balancing that with your overall lineup construction goals?
Yeah, it's something I've kind of been going back and forth with. I'm leaning towards capping it out at 3 because they're not so they're underpriced, but they're not like super cheap in terms of real cost. You're still paying $8,800 for LaMelo, $7,800 for Bridges. So it's not like you have anyone here where like if they just go get 28 or 30 points, they're really exceeding their salary. You still have to have these guys have like legitimately good games to be happy that you rostered them, especially on this slate. Even though it's only 6 games, we mentioned it earlier. There's a lot of opportunity cost between teams that are shorthanded and teams that might have guys ruled out later. So it's still difficult to say like if you play all of Ball, Bridges, Rozier, or Washington or something like that, you're still, playing like $25,000 or something worth of Hornets, which can be pretty difficult to pay off. If you did do that, I think you may as well just turn it into some sort of game stack and get the Chicago guys. But for me, I'm still leaning more so towards typically having 2 or 3, I think, in lineups.
I agree with that. Yeah, 3 seems like a good hard cap, and then probably want to. Uh, these guys aren't like locks in the sense that if they just go out and perform what we're expecting, they're going to be in the winning lineup. They're going to need to do better than that. So it is tough for 3 guys on the same team to go out and get 5 points above projection, but obviously not super unlikely compared to if they were all even value with their salaries. So I think 3 is probably the right number. And then the opportunity cost is tough because there is a chance that none of the value opens up in the late slate too. So it is kind of a gamble, but it's a gamble that I think is usually worth taking to save some spots for the late slate because not many people are doing that. So then you can get some combinations other people don't have. So, all right, let's move on. first I want to mention, if you're in New York, sports betting, you might have heard it a million times by now, but I'll reiterate, it's now live in New York. So we have a great article on the site where you can kind of go through all the different bonuses. We have two versions. One's kind of like if you just want to invest a little bit of money, do the no-brainer bonuses, and one's if you want to maximize these thousands of dollars bonuses where you have to deposit a lot too. So make sure to check those out on awesemo.com. And I mean, sports betting is in about 20 states right now, so we're doing pretty good. All right. Toronto at OKC. Toronto is a 10-point favorite. Toronto, let's see, they haven't really made any moves yet. It doesn't look like there's any significant injuries. So at first glance, the Raptors appear like they won't be huge priorities at this moment. Do you see any reason to prioritize some of these Raptors?
No, I wouldn't say prioritized in the sense where like I expect to have them as my highest owned players. I do think that the normal, the five starters are all in that category where I like getting them in tournaments as a way to differentiate because you're getting playing time. Siakam and Van Vliet are likely to play 38 to 40 minutes. Van Vliet is actually averaging like 39 minutes per game in the games he's played with Siakam this year, which like I was just surprised to see. Like that's such a high number. I know he plays a ton of minutes like all the time, but to actually average that is pretty insane. So it's still, they still have very high ceilings, but it's not like they're playing additional minutes tonight compared to what they normally do. Van Vliet and Siakam are priced to play the huge minutes that they play. So you get a very high ceiling, but I think, priced more or less correctly. I think Van Vliet's probably the most underpriced guy out of the starting five. But, kind of just mixing and matching those guys throughout lineups makes sense to me.
Agreed, yeah. They all look like fair plays, and it's all a matter of just kind of getting in a couple of these low-owned players into your lineups to give you a little bit of boost to the top. If they do have an outlier night. So I'm considering Van Vliet, Anunoby, Barnes, and Siakam all for that kind of sleeper role in lineups, but not guys that I would really rely on too much here. Let's go to OKC. If you missed it, there was some huge news. Mamadi Diakite was released today. So like it was like it doesn't sound like much, but Jeremiah Robinson Earl is out, Muscala is out, Roby is out. So really it's only Derek Favors remaining as a center on the team. Although Darius Baisley on occasion has played center in the past. So those guys haven't been totaling 48 minutes anyway. But Favors, like, is he someone that you're going to look at just because they have no other centers?
Yeah, I mean, he's only 3,300 on DraftKings. He played 26 minutes last game. Pogoshevsky is back, so I think he probably takes the Akides minutes and then probably plays a little bit more, like we saw 26 from him last time. But even if you assume Derek Favors plays 24 minutes at 3,300, he's going to look like a pretty solid value. For the season, he's averaged 0.81 DraftKings points per minute. And one thing that I think is worth noting is there's a lot of opportunity cost on this slate. We've mentioned that, but a lot of it actually doesn't come at center tonight, which is really weird. So it's a little bit easier to stomach, just taking a good point per dollar play in Favors and then paying up elsewhere. Whereas on a lot of slates, it's really difficult to justify doing that. I don't think it's quite as difficult here. So I don't have a ton of confidence in him, but at the same time, this team's really shorthanded in the front court, and we did just see him play 26 minutes. So I don't really, as long as he's starting, I don't really think there's any reason to think, that he's suddenly going back to like 18 minutes or something.
Agreed, yeah. And I will mention, I don't think Pokuševski is really a center. Like, he's listed at 7 feet, 190 pounds. Like, that's less weight than like most guys that are like 6'2" in the NBA have. Yeah. So I'm just like not really sure you can hang down low.
But like you can play Baisley at the 5 and have Pokuševski playing next to him.
Okay, that's true. Yeah. And Toronto doesn't play super big either, but I think Favors, he should get in there a lot. But yeah, I guess it's not like a lock that he plays 26 minutes again. That'd probably be a good outcome for you. But I'm still kind of encouraged by Diakite being released that he should have at least a solid amount of minutes tonight. What about the rest of the OKC Thunder? I think Baisley, he's been getting crazy minutes recently, which is weird because all season long he didn't get many minutes, and now he's playing like 35 a night. So that kind of came out of nowhere. What have you made of Baisley?
Yeah, I mean, he's been productive too, and you should probably see increased rebounding opportunities as well, because again, there's one center on the team essentially now. Oklahoma City had said recently too that at some point in the near future they may give Baisley a shot at starting at center. Even assuming that's not tonight, I think it's very safe to assume he's getting backup center minutes. So the rebounding numbers should tick up a bit. I think that the price is fair. He kind of just looks like a neutral play to me. It's still a pretty unappealing spot. Oklahoma City has a 97 implied total right now, by far the lowest on the slate. So I think you should still, keep your expectations in check. This is still a really bad team, and it's not like Baisley's a great, point per minute guy, but I think he's still pretty fairly priced as someone to just, be getting in lineups here and there.
You mentioned something interesting about the possibility Baisley starts at center. I was kind of considering that as well. So like supposing that like we get the starting lineup at 7 and it's Baisley at center, Kenrich Williams at the 3, at the 4, and Favors off the bench. The thing I'd probably do right away is swap off all my Favors, but like do you think this is like a scenario that's somewhat plausible? And then how would that change your strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess I wouldn't say plausible. I'd say it's possible, just because they have said that they're considering it. This would be a weird time for them to do it, though, I think, just because, like, they're already shorthanded in the front court. So it would be kind of weird to say, like, oh, we're going to run, like, a rotation that forces us to be even more shorthanded, kind of. But yeah, that I agree with you. Like, if Favors is not starting, just get away from Favors as quickly as you can. Get more Kenrich Williams. Like, if he were in the starting lineup, it's a good sign for his playing time. If Pokusevski were in the starting lineup, it's a good sign for his playing time. But yeah, I would just be getting away from Favors and getting to more of whoever's starting.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that Baisley did start some games at the 5 last year, I think. So this isn't something we've never seen before. It's a long time ago, but I think that if he started at the 5, then that might be good for his rebounding numbers. So I'd be kind of looking at maybe getting on the more Baisley. And then with Favors, I'll probably just swap to some 3K guy in the late game and then do a re-crunch once we get all that news for the late game. So that's kind of my general idea for any late swapping tonight is we're probably going to have some news by then. So all right. We've got some news. Darius Garland will have his minutes monitored if he plays. I assume like we weren't particularly interested in Garland to begin with, especially with LeVert on the team now. So it's safe to say we should take him out of the player pool.
It doesn't really change much for me. Like, I still think you're probably getting 32 to 34 minutes. So I still just feel like he's a risky option, but that he has a ceiling. Whenever they say monitored, I kind of just dismiss that because to me, it just means like Darius Garland's going to go play. And if his back hurts, he's going to come out. And if it doesn't, he's not. So like I typically only really downgrade them if they say something like, oh, he's going to play 30 minutes or around 30 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, I guess I'm still traumatized from Hayward the other night.
Right.
But okay, the rest of the Thunder, Trey Mann, Dort, and Giddey, any interest? I know they said Giddey's minutes are going to be limited a little bit going forward, so it seems like he might be a fade.
Yeah, actually glad that you reminded me of that because I totally forgotten. But yeah, it makes it really difficult to get to Giddey at an elevated price tag. Like, the salary has increased a bit because of SGA being out. His rates go up. But if he's going to play around 30 minutes, then it's pretty tough to get there. Dort, I think, looks pretty neutral at 6,200. I would expect him to play 34 minutes or so if this game's close. He's got a 26.5% usage rate alongside Giddey without Gilgeous-Alexander on the floor this year. The issue, of course, is that he can shoot all he wants. He's still an inefficient shooter. So you're still running a risk there. But I think that basically Baisley and Dort look like neutral plays. Favors, if he starts, looks like a pretty good value. Outside of that, if you take some shots at $3,600 Pokusevski, I think that's okay, but it shouldn't be any sort of a priority. Same goes for guys like Mann and Williams.
Nice. Before we get into the real meat of tonight's games, these 10 o'clock games, if you could hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. That will let you know on your feed when we have more DFS content. We do NBA, NFL, NHL, PGA, you name it. I know Laffy always says if they got contests, we got content. Hit the like button and notification bell to get those to your feed. And then all right, let's get into these late games. So the Lakers 9.5 point favorites versus Portland. I might have to update that because right before we went on, they announced that Westbrook and LeBron are questionable tonight. AD is probable. The only other injury news here, Dwight Howard is questionable, but I don't think that makes a huge difference. So, like, obviously, if Westbrook and LeBron both were out, that would open up massive value in this Lakers squad. But otherwise, I don't see a ton. So, how are you playing this one?
Yeah, I think it's really tricky because it's a good matchup against Portland. If LeBron, Davis, and Westbrook are all in, then Davis looks good regardless. He's only 10-1. He's center only on DraftKings, but as I mentioned before, the opportunity cost just isn't that high at center specifically tonight. So I don't really have any issues getting there. LeBron with point guard, small forward eligibility would look very good as well. But I really like the Davis piece because worst case, LeBron is in and Westbrook's in and Davis still looks good. But if those guys are out, you're just kind of naturally by definition going to whatever Davis's ownership number ends up being. If LeBron and Westbrook are out, it's probably just lower than it really should be or otherwise would be, like if we got that news earlier, because like people are definitely better at late swapping now than they used to be, but it's just still not going to be as high as it would be if we got that news right now. So kind of worst case, you're getting a good play. Best case, you're getting an under-owned excellent play. So I like Davis a lot. Getting to LeBron, still fine. You could very easily swap to Davis in most of your lineups probably if you do that. Westbrook on DraftKings, I really just don't have interest in. On FanDuel, he's kind of interesting at 7,600. If he plays his normal minutes, like even with LeBron and Davis active this year, Westbrook's averaged 1.04 FanDuel points per minute. If he gets his 34 minutes or so, he looks decent. And then, you factor in that it's a good matchup as well. The issue is just that I think it's very difficult to have any level of confidence in his playing time right now. So not only are you dealing with Westbrook just not being a good fantasy producer, by his standards at least, but he hasn't been closing games. He didn't play in overtime the other day. He didn't close the last game. He wasn't particularly happy about that. So I don't know if you get, squeaky wheel treatment and he gets back into the closing lineup tonight, or if, Frank Vogel just says, like, this is the way it is, deal with it. But so on FanDuel, I think he's very risky, but there is at least still some upside there. On DraftKings at 9,200, I have a really difficult time getting to him regardless.
Yeah, agreed. I'm kind of thinking this through, and I'm thinking, okay, so what are the odds that Westbrook is actually on the Lakers after the trade deadline? Because it seems like it just has not been working out at all. So, like, is there a greater likelihood Westbrook would sit tonight? And then if LeBron played, I feel like that would benefit LeBron the most, probably.
Yeah, I think it would make LeBron look a lot better. It would make Monk look better. You potentially are getting more minutes for Horton Tucker at 3,700 that would open up. And yeah, like the news piece I saw on Westbrook didn't sound particularly optimistic either. They said that his back flared up during their last game, and then it flared up again on the plane back to Portland, I guess. So that he was going to try and go through pregame warm up, see how it felt. But yeah, like I'm with you. Like it feels like LeBron probably, like if I had to guess, LeBron plays. And then it kind of just feels like there's a lot of potential moving parts why Westbrook wouldn't. Like it could be a legit injury. They could have a trade in the works potentially, even though there's obviously very, very limited options to trade him. So yeah, like if I had to guess, I would say LeBron in, Russ out. But I think it's still probably pretty close to 50-50.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I'm kind of curious what the trade market is for Westbrook. I feel like he's killer on those bad teams where you can bring in on fans, give them something exciting to watch.
Yeah. I mean, I've been lobbying games for because I saw a rumor that they were going to trade him to Houston for Wall, and then Houston could buy him out and Washington sign him. And I was lobbying for that just because the Wizards are going to suck regardless. I'd rather, watch Russ run up and down the floor and, they can lose games 140 to 120 instead of like 100 to 80. But, when you talk about winning and that contract, there's not really a market.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we'll see what happens with Westbrook over the next day. That'll be really interesting to watch. So if Westbrook did miss, you mentioned you like Monk. If LeBron and Westbrook miss this game, this is really tough because I feel like a lot of the fill-in players like Stanley Johnson, Trevor Ariza, Avery Bradley, like not fantasy goats at all. So, like, what would you do if LeBron and Westbrook are out?
It's kind of unbelievable just how bad this team is outside of LeBron and Davis. Yeah, I mean, Horton Tucker and Monk would be the pieces that I would like be excited about getting to because they actually do things. Without Westbrook and James on the floor this year, 206 minutes for Monk, 1.02 DraftKings points per minute, 154 minutes for Horton Tucker, zero point 0.8 DraftKings points per minute, 22.4% usage rate. Like you would get either increased playing time or at least solidified playing time in the case of Monk, if they're out, and increased production. The rest of the guys, though, like Ariza, Stanley Johnson, Austin Reeves, Bradley, all of those guys, they're cheap enough and it's a good enough matchup where, like, yeah, they could just happen to run into a good game where they pick up a few more steals than normal, knock down every three that they take or something, but you still wouldn't be able to have a whole lot of confidence in them.
Yeah, I think you're right. Horton Tucker, he looks like he'd be the guy to go to. 3,700 only. If he did get a start somehow, then he's going to be massively underpriced. Where Stanley Johnson at 3,500, Trevor Ariza at 3,600, if they start, like that really doesn't matter very much. All right, on the Portland side, we're trying to parse through the trade they made where they traded CJ McCollum among other guys, and so they traded Nance, and okay, so they got Hart and Bledsoe and Ingles back, but Bledsoe is out tonight. Hart is questionable, so I'm not exactly sure what to make of that. Do you have any inclination on whether Hart plays tonight or not?
No, kind of it seemed like there's like nobody really knows what's going on. One of the Blazers beat writers noted that Hart wasn't on the injury report and basically was like, so that would lead you to assume that he's available, but he didn't seem to know. I don't know. Like it's weird. Hopefully we get that clarified sooner than later.
Yeah, I hope so because well, I'm not super worried about it because my plan in general is just to wait until the late games to finalize my lineups. But yeah, I think that that will be pretty important because if Hart is out, like we saw CJ Ellaby play, what did he play? 34 minutes yesterday, and then you had Justice Winslow picking up big minutes, so there he got 33. So there's going to be some really underpriced guys, although they did price those guys up a little bit. So uh, if Hart is out or doesn't play, I guess I should say, then there's going to be some value here. But what about the other guys? Simons, he had a crazy good run with Lillard and McCollum out. McCollum came back. He wasn't quite as good, but now McCollum's traded. There really aren't any other point guards on the team other than Dennis Smith. So how do you see this situation in Portland for Simons going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I like Simons quite a bit. 7,300. It's not like he's super cheap, but the matchup is good. He's played 461 minutes without Lillard or McCollum on the floor this year. He's averaged 1.06 DraftKings points per minute. I would expect that he plays 36 minutes or so here. So I do like him quite a bit. If Hart is available, it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's a positive for Simons, but I'm not too concerned about it. Like, I think Hart probably just kind of takes like the Norman Powell role, and you still see Simons be very, very involved here. So Hart, I think, would have more of a negative impact on those guys you mentioned, like Ellaby, McLemore, probably taking some minutes away from Winslow. I would still want to get to Simons one way or the other.
Agreed. Yeah, I think Simons is solid, although not a huge priority at 7,300. And I also mentioned I don't really think that it's possible for Simon's projection to change very much with Hart being the only questionable. Hart doesn't really dominate in any category or really move the needle a ton. Um, so I think that Simons is a good play, but not someone I'm really going to lock in. All right, Prize Picks is our sponsor today. If you guys haven't tried them, they have daily prop-based contests. You can use the promo code Awesemo for $100 first match deposit bonus, and you build these lineups of props. They offer like a ton of different props. It's pretty cool because they have a lot of stuff other sites don't, and then they have different formats, so you can get up to 10 times your entry fee in each play. So you can go to prizepicks.com or the App Store. And you can also get one free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum if you sign up and make a deposit. You'll get that email 24 to 48 hours after you play your first Prize Picks game with the information to redeem that first month. Now let's talk about some of these props because I see some good ones. One that I'm kind of inclined to bet is the Steph Curry over on 6 assists. Now, the reason why I'm looking at that is with Draymond Green out, Steph, like Draymond Green gets such a large number of assists on the Warriors that I feel like Steph is going to have to get more of the assists. Um, so that's kind of my logic there. What are some props you're looking at, prospects?
Yeah, so I like the over on Zach LaVine, 24 and a half points. Mentioned when we talked about that game that I just like LaVine in the spot. I think he plays a lot of minutes. I think this game should be very high scoring. And LaVine still got, usage rate in the upper 20s. So I like the over there. And then Miles Bridges over 20 and a half points. I just think he plays so many minutes tonight. I feel pretty comfortable with the over.
Nice. So we got the Steph Curry assists over, Miles Bridges and LaVine points over. So that makes a nice little play there. And then use that promo code Awesemo. I mean, that's a pretty sick deal. $100 free plus you get a first match deposit bonus, plus you get the free month of Awesemo plus Platinum. All right, let's talk about this Golden State game. Golden State at Utah. Golden State's a 2-point favorite. Should be a 2-point underdog. Should be a pretty entertaining one here. News for Golden State is Klay Thompson is resting today, so most likely we see Jordan Poole play a lot more minutes. He looks like maybe the go-to guy on the Warriors side in DFS. Thoughts on Poole?
Yeah, I think he's the best option on Golden State when you factor in salary. He's 5,800. He should play more than 30 minutes here. The matchup isn't perfect, but just pretty cheap. You know that he's going to go out there and shoot, and the minutes should be there. So I agree. Like, we have him projected to be the highest owned guy from Golden State. I agree with that. It's just going to be pretty easy to get to him, I think.
Great. Yeah, I think he's solid. Maybe a guy that you can kind of pencil in, and then if better value opens up, easy to swap off. Kevon Looney is questionable for this one, so that really forces us to question, like, if he's out, they really don't have any guys at center that really play center because Bielitsa is also out. So their next guys, Rudy Gobert is out, so you got Azubuike and Whiteside as the Utah matchups. So I don't think this is necessarily anything they have to really adjust to, but Juan Toscano Anderson and Kuminga are really the other bigs. So what do you expect to happen?
Yeah, I mean, if Looney is out, I expect both of those guys to be viable options. I'm not really sure who would start. Like, last game, Toscano Anderson wasn't even in the rotation. Kuminga was the one subbing in for Kevon Looney. So, I guess based on that, you would assume Kuminga starts, but we've seen earlier in the year that Toscano Anderson did. So one way or the other, I think both guys would look reasonable. The issue, Toscano Anderson's only a center on DraftKings, and he's not a great point per minute guy. So, like, at 3,500, he'd be like Derek Favors to me, I think, where, like, it's a decent point per dollar projection. I still wouldn't have a ton of confidence. Kuminga's more expensive, but he's power forward eligible. So you just have, more spots you can fit him into. He's only 4,400. The playing time's been up a bit recently anyway. So I think that he'd be the one that I want to get to the most if Looney's out.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. Kuminga looks like he'd be the guy. Thanks, Fear Money Entertainment. Join Team Awesemo. I'm very intrigued by this Fear Money Entertainment, like what that is, but it definitely sounds like something that if you like roster certain players, like your PJ Tucker, maybe that's because you fear money. And then thank you, Adam Palmer. Naz Reid for a sneaky 20 fantasy points on FanDuel. I think that Naz Reid, it's a little bit tough to recommend him because Karl Anthony Towns is playing. He's not on the injury report, so I don't really see any way he could necessarily get to the enough minutes. What do you think about Naz Reid?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of need Towns to, like, get in foul trouble or get hurt or something. I'm not anticipating Reid really playing alongside Towns, so it's tough. I mean, like, Reid's a good point per minute guy, so, like, and somebody just said it in chat, like, he could get 20. That's still not what you're expecting from him. But the issue is that, like, 20 is probably not getting it done for you in tournaments anyway.
Agreed. Yeah. I think the problem is Vanderbilt and McDaniels are the other bigs, and they're also the only guy, like these three guys, Towns, McDaniels, and Vanderbilt are the only guys not on the injury report in Minnesota. So it'll be an interesting team to break down in a sec. But okay, going back to Golden State, any interest in Curry or Wiggins?
Yeah, I'm interested in both of these guys, and I like Curry's only getting about 10% ownership on DraftKings. Wiggins is at 13%. I think Klay Thompson's absence is actually a pretty big deal for both of them. I was actually shocked when I saw this earlier, but Curry's played, I think it was 208 or 209 minutes now with Draymond off the floor and with Klay Thompson on. Over that time, he has a 20.6% usage rate. So I don't think that continues going forward, but why I think it matters is that Klay's been playing in most of their games recently. So you've kind of just gotten the salary creeping down as a result of Curry's production. And without Klay or Draymond on the floor, he's got a 32.7% usage rate this year. He's averaged 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. So I think it's a situation where Curry is actually in a little bit different situation tonight than he normally is. I think he does benefit from Klay being out, at least relative to what we've seen so far this year when Klay is in. So I do like taking some shots on Curry at the low ownership. And then Wiggins is the same thing. He goes from like an 18.5% usage rate up to 23.5%. So both of those guys, the minutes are going to be there, but I think the salaries have kind of just gotten to a point where they're more so priced for Klay Thompson to be knocking down their production.
Nice. Yeah, agreed. Wiggins in particular looks like a solid value. On the Utah side, pretty much what we had last game, where Clarkson came back. He played about 20 minutes, and then Rudy Gay continues to be out. Last game, people were speculating that Whiteside might get the start. However, it was still Udoka Azubuike that got the start, so that kind of screwed up some lineups. But do you see Whiteside as a potential starter tonight, or is that time kind of passed?
I don't think he starts. I thought he would last game, but one, the fact that he still didn't, and then two, Azubuike played well. And he really came through for them down the stretch after Whiteside fouled out. So I'm expecting Whiteside to come off the bench, but I do think he's still an interesting play in tournaments because his salary has really dropped. He's down to 5,400 now on DraftKings. He's only projected for 1% ownership. And if you just look at the last game, he played like 20 minutes, but he fouled out. He played 14 minutes in the first half. So in the first, if you were able to just replicate the first half, you're still looking at a 28-20 split in favor of Whiteside. If he played 28 minutes, he's going to look great at 5,400. But even if he plays 24 to 26, he's pretty likely to do well at that salary. So I do still kind of like gambling on Whiteside here, even though it is a risky spot. I just think there's a really, really high ceiling if things break your way.
Yeah, it's definitely something to look at with the fouls in the last game. So you're saying, yeah, it looks like he played. Okay, so he played 14 minutes, like you're saying, and then yeah, he only played like 6 minutes in the second half. So that does offer a lot of encouragement for Whiteside tonight. So that could be a guy you could gamble on. What about the rest of the Jazz? I mean, pretty much the same guys we're used to: Conley, Mitchell, Clarkson, Bogdanovich, and O'Neal. Like no one's really popping out at me. Any lean towards any of those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mitchell's my favorite of the group. I think he's underpriced at 8,600. The issue is just that he's $200 less than LaMelo, and I think LaMelo is even more underpriced. But you are likely to get a pretty substantial ownership discount. We have 20% projected ownership going to Mitchell. We have 35% going to LaMelo. So close to a 2-to-1 discount. If you needed not a contrarian play, but somebody, just a little bit lower owned than LaMelo. If it's a lineup where, for example, you have 2 or 3 other Hornets, Mitchell's certainly one of the guys that can fill in there. He played 36 minutes last game, which was good to see because he only played like 22 or 23 in his first game back, partly because it was a blowout, but he also had been running kind of some shorter rotations. So it was good to see him play 36 minutes last game. He acknowledged after the game that he was absolutely exhausted, but he was able to do it. And it makes me think that you're likely to get, his normal 34 minutes or so tonight.
Nice. So let's talk about Awesemo Hall of Fame real quick. We have, of course, a contest where you can get free months of Awesemo Plus. All you have to do, download the Awesemo avatar at awesemo.com/avatar, tweet your wins on Twitter at AwesemoHOF. And then you can win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum if you finish in the top 3 of a 5,000 or greater person contest, if there aren't too many ties. So I saw a killer takedown the other night. A Anderson 13, 100K in the NBA big tournament on DraftKings. Did it with McGee, 1%. That was a huge difference maker because I remember a lot of the centers busted. So props to A Anderson. A shout out to Palikuris in third, or tied for second with 27.5K, not too shabby. And then Teo Deck. I remember Teo Deck, man, he like took down 2 NFL showdowns in a row, like Monday and Sunday. It was pretty crazy. He's back at his usual business. He took down 10K in the late night FanDuel shot. So congrats to Teo Deck. Brian, he took down $200 in one of the micro contests on FanDuel. Congrats to Brian. Cue the music 22, or Snot Knocker 22 as he goes by in DFS. You gotta like that. Thanks for helping me take down the small tourney. I watch you all daily on YouTube and love the streams. So it's good to see guys taking down these contests. This one was a 10-cent one for $100. Pretty good. And then Odd Shopper Hall of Fame, we saw a pretty killer single game parlay, actually 2 of them, both plus 600. So congrats to Brandon from a double dip there. It looks like he used Odd Shopper. And Bogart, he also had a single game parlay, plus 2,300, a nice little 9-legger. So that's, or 10 legs. So that's pretty tough to do. Props to Bogart. All right, let's get into this last game. We got Minnesota at Sacramento. Minnesota is a 9-point favorite. So they had this injury report where Beverly, Russell, Edwards, Okogie, Prince, and Nasrid are all questionable. So that's more than half the team. So like, I don't even know how to process this. I'm just like, maybe I'll wait until later to really dig into it. What are your thoughts on this Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is that even if you assume that these guys are in, you're going to get to them a decent amount. And so and between that and the Portland game and, everything else, like you're going to have plenty of room, I think, to swap guys around. But like if everybody's in, I think 7K D'Angelo Russell's still going to look really good. Towns at 9,700 on DraftKings, 9,900 on FanDuel still looks really good. Edwards and Beverly both look fine. So it's kind of just, if everybody's in, I still like all of the starters, at least to some extent. And then as you start ruling guys out, everyone else just starts to look better. Like if Beverly is out and Russell is in, you get increased assist opportunities for Russell. If they're both out, you're looking at a lot more minutes for guys like Noel and McLaughlin. If Edwards is out, you're looking at more usage for guys like Russell and Towns. So it's just, I expect to be getting to these guys anyway. And then, I just know I'm going to have to be late swapping later, most likely to get to whoever is actually playing for the Timberwolves.
Yeah, this one is tough because we really don't know who's going to be the value, but we know there will be value. So my recommendation is just have some late slate spots open so that you can make all the right swaps later. It would be really interesting if Beverly, Russell, and Edwards were all out, because then like that's like all their playmakers basically. Like Karl Anthony Towns not being an on-ball guy for the most part, so that would really open up massive value. I'm kind of talking myself into like maybe having at least 4 or 5 spots in the late games for taking advantage of all these late news. But yeah, I think that the main thing here is just you probably want some Timberwolves, but we just don't know who yet. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, it is nice. Like it's going to be a pain with all of the late swapping that you're probably going to have to do tonight. But it is nice that you have 3 games here and that there's like legitimately good plays from all of them. So I'm not, overly concerned about being in a situation where like I'm stuck and I can't move guys around.
Yeah, definitely. On the Sacramento side, this is where I know you guys have been begging us to cover the Mo Harkless doubtful news that we opened with, and this is the chance. So Mo Harkless is doubtful. Rashawn Holmes is not on the injury report today, so I think we know what's going to happen as center. But Bagley is questionable. Sabonis Lamb and Holiday are unknown status right now. I don't know what to do with them. Looks like maybe they'll play. So I'm trying to like parse that. Do you have any insight if these
No, I've
Kings?
been scrolling Twitter for the last like 5 minutes while you were talking, and I still can't find anything that I can't find anything from a source that I would trust saying that they're playing tonight. But like they're not on the injury report. I don't know. It's the same as Josh Hart right now, but it obviously like I think it has a much bigger impact than Hart does because you're talking about three guys and you're talking about Sabonis potentially just wrecking the entire front court. Like if Sabonis is playing, I don't want Holmes, I don't want Bagley, I don't want Metu. Like it potentially just ruins everything. So hopefully we get some clarification there.
Yeah, I think that this is one where like maybe the value starts off looking good and then looks worse by the time the game starts. So that's always a red flag. But do you think it makes sense to assume that everyone plays given they're not on the injury report?
Yeah, I think so, especially because we haven't seen anything like saying that they're not. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird situation because like you never know. You just never really know like exactly what's going on. I do know that I saw a tweet saying De'Aaron Fox like met Sabonis after yesterday's game or something. So like they're at least there. It's not like these guys are still sitting in Indiana or something. But yeah, I'm kind of assuming for now that they play.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Now I don't think you can roster Sabonis or Holiday, at least on DraftKings tonight. But this is making me think. Okay, so will Sabonis like replace Holmes in the starting lineup? Will you replace like the starting four, which I guess has been a combination of Bagley, Harkless, and Metu? What do you think the starting lineup is going to look like?
Fox, Mitchell, Barnes, either Bagley or Metu, and Sabonis. Actually, but like it also could be Fox, Mitchell, Holiday, Barnes, Sabonis. I don't think Sabonis plays next to Holmes. Like that is a really tough pairing. I think the big question is just like who fills the fifth starter spot between Holiday, Bagley, Metu.
One thing I'm also kind of in the back of my mind, I'm thinking back to the start of the season where the team just absolutely hated Bagley. So I'm like, is he going to get traded in the next day? Like, that seems like one of the more likely guys that could get traded. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. I don't really know what the market is there since he's kind of just bad, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. So this one, okay, if we assume these guys are in, since they're not in the player pool, like there really aren't very many DFS options. Fox with no Halliburton, I could see the argument being made that he should get a higher assist share with Halliburton out. They don't have any other high assist guys aside from Sabonis, who actually has a pretty solid assist percent this year. So, do you think that this trade is going to make Fox's fantasy point scoring go up?
Yeah, I think so because you're taking Halliburton's minutes and essentially giving them to Davion Mitchell, who, like without Halliburton on the floor this year, Mitchell has a 23.3% assist percentage, but Fox is at 27.7% without him. So I think you see an increased usage rate for Fox, and I think you see an increased assist percentage. I know he has struggled this year, but I do think you get more fantasy production from him now that Halliburton's gone.
Nice. So I think he looked pretty solid. He did get insane minutes in this last game, which was his first coming back from injury. He played 35 minutes, but he only played 3 of the last 8 minutes. So I assume that game wasn't that competitive there. So I think Fox is a pretty good target, 7,700 tonight. Okay, we got 2 minutes left. This slate, it feels like it's going to be one you don't want to leave the household until the last game locks. So, what are your final thoughts on today's slate?
Definitely, yeah, like you said, definitely be around to late swap. Someone did mention it in chat, and I just found it too. For those asking, Rashawn Holmes not currently on the injury report. There's no word on his availability. We knew that. Where's the? I think he said the same thing about Sabonis somewhere. So yeah, just keep an eye out for Josh Hart news and Kings news. Obviously, that's going to change a ton. And then half of Minnesota is questionable. So definitely keep just lineup spots open and be ready to late swap.
Agreed. Yeah, this one, don't get too locked into one lineup here. It's definitely going to pay to have some flexibility and maybe land on some combinations, although people can't because they have too many guys from Charlotte, for instance. Not that Charlotte's bad, but it could be even better value later. All right, guys, we got more content coming up for you after this. Give us a like and subscribe to keep up with all our shows. And then if you hit that notification bell, you'll get an alert when we go live in the morning. We also have a podcast giveaway where if you leave a 5-star review with your Awesemo username or Twitter, you can get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. So make sure to check that out during this little break here. And we got Eric and Greg on Live Before Lock coming up right next. So stay tuned.
Greg Ehrenberg here with Nick the Picker. This is a big deal for a lot of Nick's ever-growing Twitter followers because he's never revealed his face publicly before. Very, very private individual. Doesn't even hardly wants his name out there. His wife has never seen his face before. He wears a paper bag around the house, much like Cleveland Browns fans, Jacksonville Jaguars fans. He doesn't want to be revealed, but he was kind enough to do it to release the best betting content possible. So we're happy to have Nick on board. He's going to be doing some betting content with us. So do us a favor, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, not just because it's going to help us, but it helps you as well. You're going to have access to free betting information. And we're doing a little bit of a giveaway here. If you guys saw a couple days ago, Nick put out a tweet, retweet that tweet, like it. And if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, we're going to away $100 to somebody who does all those steps. So that's $100. All you have to do is subscribe to the YouTube channel, retweet and likes Nick tweet. But without further ado, Nick, I want to start by asking about the Chicago Bulls, a team that's really been struck by the injury bug lately. Ayo Dosunmu, he's the most recent player added to the injury report. He is out for today. That's in addition. Lonzo Ball is out. Alex Caruso is out. Patrick Williams and Derrick Jones, they've both been out for a while. So this team's shorthanded. There's a couple of player props you're eyeing. What are those?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Greg. So for today, I'm going back to one of my favorite things I like to do in the NBA is centers versus the Hornets. They give up the second most points in the league to centers, as well as the most rebounds in the league to centers. So I'm going with Vooch over 20.5 points at minus 118 on FanDuel. He has hit that number 4 of the last 6 games, averaging 24 points over that span and 17.8 shots per game, which is what you want as far as the volume you're looking at for the over points. Fastest pace in the league for the Hornets, and the implied total over-under is 237. With the game supposed to be close at -2, another thing I want to make sure I'm staying with as far as close games.
Yeah, and I know you've been a little concerned about blowouts as of late, but, less of a concern in this game. And then I also want to ask you about Zach LaVine, somebody else who I know you mentioned to me as a player that you like a little bit and does potentially stand to gain minutes. I know he generally plays a lot, but you consider there's no Dosunmu, no Alex Caruso, no Lonzo Ball. There could be big minutes in store for Zach LaVine. So what stands out to you about him from a props perspective?
Yeah, so it was either DeRozan or LaVine for me. And DeRozan's obviously been killing it recently. His number's at 28.5, but I just like the LaVine number at 24.5. I just think it's a better number overall. He's coming, believe it was 5 games back from a knee injury. And his first game back, he got 32 points last game and already played them once at 25 points in the first game. Again, fastest pace in the league. They give up the most threes to shooting guards and the third most points to shooting guards. So again, something I'm looking for along with the high implied over-under. I just love the matchup. And I think I'm going to go with those 2 players overall.
Here's something I'm going with. And something else I should be pointing out. If you guys go over to Awesemo.com, we have something called Odd Shopper. Free tool to use, really useful for prop betting. Because over there, just based on our projections, we have projected lines for every single player out there, props, and it has the best available odds at all of the legal books in your area. And you could use that to find expected win percentage based on our projections and expected projected ROI. So I really like to use this tool to help me find some of the best prop bets. And one thing I'm eyeing for today is Patrick Beverley over 0.5 blocks. Now, I know this is kind of a weird line, Patrick Beverley over 0.5 blocks, but he averages nearly a block per game for the season, and it's plus money on the over. You can get a plus 120. So just looking at Patrick Beverley, who has more games with blocks than these games without blocks. Obviously, it's far from a lock or anything like that, but it's a number that really should be like minus 115 or minus 120 based on our data. So I like the over for Patrick Beverley, plus money there. It's something to take advantage of. Now, Nick, I'm going to kick it back to you. There's a Cleveland Cavaliers big man that you're looking at for today. Who is it, and what do you like?
So going back to Jared Allen, I bet him a lot this year. He's very productive as a center. Going against San Antonio, they are allowing 6th most points for centers, and he's hit 4 of the last 5 times over that 14.5 mark at -108 on FanDuel. He's currently averaging 17.2. Oh my gosh.
No, that's good. We're getting a little bit of Nick's personality here. Nick, cat guy. That's good to know.
There's a
and
cat.
he's not a black cat, so
It's a
good
cat,
luck.
yep.
We know he's got good luck.
Yeah, he's a demon. So
All right. By the way, Tyler, you just counted me in. Does that mean we're live now, or is it me still talking? Am I talking or am I talking? Which one is it, me or me? Okay, good. I got the thumbs up. That's me. All right, guys. I'm here. I was just there, but I'm here now also. Do us a favor, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. As you just saw, we've got betting content over on the Odd Shopper channel. You can subscribe to that as well. We've got an NBA slate to talk about. We are sponsored today by Prize Picks. That is something else going on. We also got the NBA trade deadline going on, which is a whole mess in itself. Eric, how are you doing today, and how are we navigating this slate?
I'm all right. Yeah, this slate is bonkers, and anybody who tells you otherwise is bonkers themselves. I mean, we've got 3 games, and generally I'm the guy who likes to talk late swap a lot. So you would think with 3 games at 10 p.m. Eastern time that I'd really be looking forward to this, but there's massive opportunity cost here, and we're going to have some interesting plays that we have to kind of sift through in these early games. Charlotte and Chicago, this is always set up to be a track meet, and I think you want to get exposure there. It's of course baked into the projections, but it's not baked into the price, and that's really where it's like, I need to get exposure to some of these guys. Then we have OKC, who I don't know who's going to start at center there. That's just a weird thing that we have to sift through. Toronto plays every guy 48 minutes a game, it feels like. So like, we have some exposure we need to get to the early games, but I am so focused on what's going on here with Portland. Is Josh Hart going to play? That would be so weird if he's sitting courtside in New Orleans and then he just decides to suit up here, but that would ruin everything on Portland. Minnesota, we've got the walking wounded here with Russell, Beverly, and Edwards. I don't really know what's going to pan out there, but if any one of those 3 plays, I think that they're viable. And in the absence of the others, they become elite. And then we've got this whole thing with the Domantas Sabonis in Sacramento and the other side of that game. I mean, I want to play a lot of Rashawn Holmes at 5K. I want to, but I have no idea if I can on DraftKings right now. So much is up in the air. You really have to be cautious of what your expectation of this slate is. Go ahead.
You said you have to be cautious. I just said of everything.
Of everything, literally.
So for all intents and purposes, these are the players that I'm considering questionable right now. LeBron James, Domantas Sabonis, Anthony Edwards, Russell Westbrook, D'Angelo Russell. We just got word that Karis LeVert is playing, but he's going to come off the bench. Josh Hart, Patrick Beverly, Kevon Looney, Justin Holiday, Jeremy Lamb, Marvin Bagley, Taurean Prince, Naz Reid. So here's the issue with the trade situation. None of the guys have been ruled out. So I don't know what to make of that information, because you and I were talking right before we started. You and I were talking as I was also talking on some other video, and that was also fairly confusing.
Done, though.
Fairly confusing when we brought us onto this show. But that aside, if these guys are for sure not playing, why have they not been ruled out yet?
I have no idea. For me, it's so weird because like you did bring up the Justice Winslow thing, but for me, the huge thing is like, if you're going to be inheriting multi-million-dollar assets going back and forth, I'm sure they've done their due diligence and already gotten physicals and done most of that stuff, but they still have to check them. And I'm assuming take a look and make sure that, you don't go to the grocery store, buy produce without checking it. Well, you can see if the grapes have any issues on them or whatever. I don't want to make this a grocery store narrative, but that's kind of what it is. Like Domantas Sabonis is literally just going to suit up the next day. That would be just really surprising and shocking to me for a guy making, $18.5 million a year, that you just let him fire it up over here. First game, like the next day, especially for a team going nowhere. And maybe this is a win now trade where the play-in game.
Absolutely win now trade.
It's so dumb. And Ryan and I went on an absolute tangent. He loves this trade for Sacramento, and I am floored by that take, but he's sharper than me, and I'll just kind of admit that. That's fine by me, but I do not understand it by any means. And they don't have a single guy on the floor in the NBA in this era of the NBA to have nobody on the floor shooting better than 32% from 3 on
Harrison
your team.
Barnes.
I see he's it. So I'm saying that you have Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield were your best 2 3-point shooters, and now you're
Harrison
basically
Barnes.
inheriting.
Go ahead.
I'm done. Go ahead.
All right. So I agree with you. I don't understand the trade. And the shooting is a disaster, but the only guy who could shoot is Harrison Barnes. So all that aside, though, at least for today, like, are you assuming these guys are out? Are you assuming they're questionable or just no clue?
My thing is there are at least ways. So how much money are you willing to lose? That's got to be the first question. Maybe that's a good question to ask on every DFS slate, but maybe it's more applicable for this one. We're 51 minutes from lock, and we get to kind of play it minute by minute here, where Spurs, Cleveland, we can kind of play the high upside guys from that one. Chicago and Charlotte is really where you kind of have to make some really tough decisions. Maybe OKC. I'm assuming that we're going to get Favors starting, but that's still to be debatable whether or not he's even like a priority play at his price for everything else. We just have like a 2-hour gap where a flurry of news, for better or for worse, is going to come out, and you just have to live with it. And yeah, you're going to miss out on some Charlotte pieces. You're going to miss out on some Chicago pieces. You're going to miss out on possibly some really high upside guys. I mean, Van Vliet, Siakam playing massive minutes, opportunities in like a guy for Kerry Trent, who's, got capable of putting up 35 real points. But I think what I'm planning on doing is making sure that I get to, and this is where it really gets messy, because you can't just say one for one salary wise and kind of plug them in. So what I did is I went and just isolated the 3 games in the late night hammer, and I gave them all a thumbs up on Cruncher. And, I think if I had given myself enough time earlier in the afternoon, I would limit some of the projections, but I didn't know what was going to happen with LeVert or Garland. We saw that LeVert's going to come off the bench and Garland there, plus not really a team that I'm prioritizing whatsoever. But I'm just going to kind of give everybody a bump up in those late games. And I'm going to give myself the opportunity to just get to more of them organically, rather than saying I'm going to plug in Cruncher and get one of this, one of that, mainly because I want to mix and match different salary points. Now, most of the guys that I want to get to, Metu or Rashawn Holmes or some of these cheaper guys, like that's generally going to be something where, it's value pieces, but then there's Cat in the absence of everybody else. There would be Anthony Edwards in the absence of the other guys on the floor that I would want to get to. Same thing with D'Lo. We're looking at De'Aaron Fox on a back-to-back coming off of injury, which is now at this point, I think we can all understand not really an injury and more of a wait and see that was going on there. Portland, if Hart plays, we have so many question marks. So for me, I think the best approach is just to give everybody a boost in the late night hammer and let mix and match, let the mixing and matching happen more organically. Because I think if you just plug and play one player, you might get too much of one price point than you'd want.
So first thing we don't want to do, we don't want to be locking somebody 100% in the first game of today's slate, although that appeared to be a pretty good strategy yesterday, which was really
10x your money, baby.
Was that the sharpest thing you've done all year?
It's not very nice. It's not very nice. 10x my money, baby.
Okay, but okay, is it not nice? Perhaps, but is it inaccurate?
Quack, quack. Yes, it's. And here's the thing. I was thinking about this as well. I was like, well, I don't know what I want to say about this. This is why we didn't lead off with anything. But, it's like, I'd rather be lucky than good. Well, I guess I'd rather be stupid than good, because it seems like doing stupid stuff sometimes in DFS. CSV upload. It's like, how many times have I uploaded a freaking CSV? And I've done it how many times in Excel through my sheet, carrying it over, uploading my lineups, and bam. Like, it is so ridiculous that I couldn't recognize one line that messed up everything. And, that's just how it worked out. So I ended up getting 100% of a guy that put up 60 plus. That's fun.
Yeah. That's so fun. It ended up being a good situation for you. But then the other thing too is, we liked the value pieces that were around him, and we could go back to some of those value pieces again. But the reason I brought that up, other than because, that I like to give you a hard time, and people, from time to time, I do find it enjoyable. But for this particular slate, especially because we just had the Cleveland news, I'm going to tie us in because there's relevance. Darius Garland is in. Brandon Goodwin in. Karis LeVert in, but coming off the bench. I don't think there's that much reason that we need to be targeting Cleveland. And I don't think the Spurs are super appealing on the other side of that game either. Do you think it is reasonable to intentionally today, not unintentionally, get our lineups going without players from the first game, just to kind of see what happens from these later games? Because we really don't know what's going to happen. And presumably that is where the best value of today is going to be.
Okay, so I talked about giving a thumbs up to everybody else here too. This is where I think it just gets fascinating, because I do want to get to Cat. I want to get to De'Aaron Fox. I want to get to either LeBron James, Anthony Davis, if either one of them plays on DK. And I'm focused a little bit more on DK today than I am on FanDuel, just because I'm running so good over there now. That's got to be what it is. But I think I'm going to be capping just putting like 5% maximum of every player from San Antonio, Cleveland. I doubt that I get to anybody more than that organically anyway, but just putting the cap there kind of limits me getting to anybody there. Now, Chicago and Charlotte is where you have to really start making the tough decisions. And I keep referring to it. It's just an ownership thing on DraftKings. You're looking at Kelly Oubre, 5,600. You're looking at LaMelo Ball, 8,800. You're looking at PJ Washington, 4,900. These are guys at different positions. They're kind of priced all over the place. I think that we have to start to just really look at who are the most likely pieces to make major differences for us in the late night hammer. Now, on DraftKings, Anthony Simons is a guard that I think you can land on either way, but because of the elevated tags, Justice Winslow, 4,500. We're looking at Ben McLemore, 4,300 now. Like, none of the Portland pieces really intrigue me as much. And that's a bummer because there's 5 positions you can play a guy who's shooting guard, small forward eligible, and it makes it easier to get them in a bunch of lineups. So for me, I think the guy that I'm lowest on from the Charlotte game is going to be PJ Washington, simply because of the position of power forward center that I don't want to give up in the event that we get an opportunity to get to Metu, who is grading out as like legitimately the worst play on the slate if you get Sabonis playing, like legitimately useless if you get Sabonis playing. Harrison Barnes, I think if you landed on him, it's not the apocalypse either way, but like I want to play Holmes and I want to play Metu. And if I'm going with the narrative that Sabonis isn't going to play, which I think is going to be my lean here, I at least have some Minnesota pieces I can land on. I have some guys that I can get to from the Lakers spot to pay up for. You know, I have some guys near the floor for Utah, Golden State, some guys that are just cheaper in that mid-range. Jordan Poole, if I landed on him, I'd be okay. Like, you're probably not going to win in that event if you get all of those guys ruled in, but I think it's worth the risk just because you can see the clear path for them to absolutely smash if they have an average game in the absence of all these guys.
Yeah. And by the way, because I'm sure there's people who are sitting going, hey, we're 15 minutes in. These guys haven't told us who their favorite plays are. I think this is a really important slate to kind of talk about some of the strategy here. The reason being is I would totally honest. I don't really know who I'm rostering right now. I have a build set. I'm going to be doing so much late swapping later, which I think everybody should be doing on this slate. It's really hard to avoid. And also, just to plug it afterwards, after the slate locks, Eric and I aren't going anywhere. We're going to be sticking around for 30 minutes, talk about prize picks, going over Odd Shop or some of our favorite bets on this slate, but also at some point, we're going to be getting news on starting lineups, which players are in, which players are out. And that's really going to help guide us to find who the best value plays on the slate are. But I think now we could kind of start getting into some of the position by position. And I want to start by asking just about the guards here, Eric. Who are the ones that as of now, you know you're going to be rostering? Not ones that are dependent on injuries, but some of the guards you know you're going to be getting into lineups.
There is no way I'm not playing LaMelo Ball. There's no way. He's 8,800. He's sub 9K over on DK. I think we have to be looking at some upside. And if you miss out on a LaMelo Ball 55 spot, you're going to regret it, regardless of when that happens. I think that I have to get to some exposure of him. I have to get to some exposure of Fred VanVleet. He's just playing too many minutes at 8,700 for me not to take high upside options. Now, again, we're looking at getting to a lot of value on the late parts. And sure, there's high upside guys. We have LeBron that could be in the absence of Westbrook, which is kind of what I'm anticipating, but not completely sold in on that yet. We're looking at high guys like Cat that we want to pay up for in the late night hammer. We've seen front courts just give up, or we've seen the Sacramento front court give up gajillion fantasy points to centers, and Cat is no different here. But looking at LaMelo Ball, there's just no way that around a 1.35 DraftKings points per minute player here on the season that I'm not going to be overinvested when he's sub 9K. And I expect there to be some more opportunity for him. We have no Book Night. We have no Martin. We obviously know we have no Gordon Hayward out there, which can definitely be something to detract at least some usage there for him. And, you know, Kelly Oubre is right now who I'm presuming the second or the fill-in starter to be there. He started the second half of that Toronto game, played 38 minutes. I think that that's got to be a pretty easy call to say that if he starts, he's going to be a good piece of value to get to as well. But LaMelo Ball, 8,800, I'd say out of any player in the early window of games, he's the guy that I'm the least willing to give up exposure to.
Yep, I think that totally makes sense. And I mean, still, it's not even that early of a slot. You know, 7:30. So we're still looking at that 7:00 time frame. The Cleveland Spurs. I don't really think that's a game we need to get exposure to. But other guys like PJ Washington is still going to make it into some of my lineups because something else that is going to dictate some of this slate is the Hornets are still really thin on the wing because we know about the Gordon Hayward injury from last game that happened, while we're on a show. Gordon Hayward falls, hurts his ankle. That was Monday night when I was doing the show with Josh. He was really popular. That's label Hayward's out. Book Knight isn't expected to play. Cody Martin isn't expected to play. Jalen Martin isn't expected to play. I get there's potential for a lot of value in the later games, and I'm with you, by the way, on LaMelo Ball. I do like getting to him quite a bit. It's also really hard for me to ignore PJ Washington in this spot because he played so many minutes last game in the absence of Gordon Hayward, and I think we're probably going to see some of the same again. So PJ Washington, is he just not a priority for you? And I realized I might have asked you the question the wrong way because I asked you just about guards particularly, but as long as we're talking about Charlotte, I'm going to bring PJ Washington into it. Is he somebody else that you're going to be getting to from this game?
Yeah, I think he's the guy that I'm most willing to part with from Charlotte simply because of his position, power forward center. I've talked about Sacramento where if you get no exposure, I was thinking Holmes was going to be out again. He had that personal issue yesterday. Obviously he's back today, but he's $5K. Damian Jones, I thought at 3,700 was going to be massive chalk. If you had no Holmes out, we saw what he did yesterday, 36 fantasy points. But with Holmes back, I think it becomes Holmes being the guy that I want to get to at 5K a lot. If you obviously have none of those Indiana guys that are joining the fray here in Sacramento. And then Chimezie Metu, who grades out once again, is one of the worst plays on the slate as it stands right now in our projections in the event that all of these guys get back. But Metu, I mean, he played 34 minutes yesterday off the bench. And he was a guy that in the late slate, I was very, very high on it and way overweight too, over on FanDuel playing the late slate there. He's 4,200 over on DraftKings today. I think he's a piece that I just would want to get to a lot more than a popular PJ Washington. Now, I also say that knowing that PJ Washington is the guy I expect to have come off the bench. He did play 32 minutes off the bench. Obviously Gordon Hayward went down early in that game, but I think that that's the same about allotment of minutes. We have him projected at 33. I think I'm a little bit lighter on him at 4,900 just as a result of that. We've seen some big minute games here from Mason Plumlee of late. Now, 28 and 24, the last two. Miami was a blowout. Toronto was pretty much a blowout, their 15-point game, but 32-30 that we had leading into that, Cleveland and Boston. I think that he plays, a little bit north of 30 minutes most of the time when they're competitive games are, right at the 30-minute mark where we have them projected around. So PJ Washington, just a little bit more uncomfortable coming off the bench. If he's starting, maybe we have a different conversation. But as it stands right now, he's the one guy that I'm just way undercutting the field because of how good that position could be later on.
So here's what I'm doing. Every player who's listed as questionable in those late games, took him out, given minutes to other guys. And now I'm kind of seeing what do my lineups look like if all of these guys are out? And I wanted to point this out because here's someone I'm getting to a lot of now. And am I going to get to him later? Who knows? Because it can depend on injury situations. Jalen Noel. Here are the players listed as questionable for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Josh Okogie, Patrick Beverley, Taurean Prince, D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, Naz Reid. If you get some combination of Beverley, Russell, Edwards out, I think Noel just kind of has to play a lot of minutes. And Here's the other thing too. It's a 10 p.m. start time. If those guys ultimately end up playing, there's going to be plenty of swappability there. We've got players injured from the Lakers. We've got the Portland situation. We've got the Sacramento situation on the other side of Minnesota. So I just have a lot of Noel in my lineups as a placeholder. Do you have any pushback to it? Or do you think that's kind of a reasonable way to approach him?
I think McLaughlin gets the start. We saw it's so weird because we saw Noel start there for a hot second. We then saw two starts. End of December. I watch way too much Timberwolves basketball. That's my team. So it's unfortunate. Utah, he started and was very serviceable. Jordan McLaughlin's never been the fantasy producer he just put up last game. Played 19 minutes, put up 39.75 against Sacramento. But it feels like Noel's been a guy that they've been a little bit apprehensive to just put into that starting unit unless, they were really depleted there for that start against Phoenix. Otherwise, that's his only start he's had this entire season. So I think both him and McLaughlin at their low salaries become viable, 3,500 and 3,400. They're basically the Justice Winslow and CJ Ellaby's of this slate. They're $1,000 cheaper than those guys. I don't expect them to be beating down the door fantasy producers. I mean, Noel's over a fantasy point per minute producer, but he never really gets extended past 25, 30 minutes. It tends to be McLaughlin playing 26, 27 minutes as the starter in some of these situations where there's no Beverly, no Russell, and no Edwards, even going back to last year. And obviously Noel out of Washington, shout out EMAC. He's definitely somebody that I think can be a great playmaker for them off the bench and still is viable, but I think both of them need to kind of be considered.
Yeah, I mean, to me also, I just want to load up on these late games and then just swap kind of based on whatever happens. Two players.
You're kind of talking me into doing something where I just isolate. Like, this is almost something we should do where it's like any piece of value, we just extract all of it from the late slate. Like we just basically remove any player underneath $5,000 from our player pool. And Kobe White's a guy that I'm just nervous as all hell to be lower.
Well, but here's what I did. All the players that are questionable, I took them out and allocated the minutes to other players that I think it would go to. So now I kind of have this setup I'm looking at where it's like, okay, if Noel's a great value play, who else am I getting to? If Anthony Davis is a great pay up option, who else am I getting to? And from that, I'm actually able to figure out, you know what? I'm still getting to LaMelo Ball. I'm still getting to PJ Washington, even with all the value that I'm seeing on somebody like Noel or Malik Beasley in this situation. So that to me is this the 100% correct way to do this? I don't know, but it kind of makes sense to me to approach from this stance where at least I know that I have potential to get to the best value plays. And it's something that, you know, it really worked out for me yesterday. I did something sort of similar with it. I played a bunch of Damian Jones yesterday, relative. I had like 20% of him. He was 1% owned, massive game, just to be able to get exposure to these guys who are potentially going to be in the later games that are just not going to pick up as much ownership, but still have a massive potential upside. It's just a risk I'm willing to take. Even if there's somebody who I've projected for, just throwing random numbers out, if there's somebody I've projected for, let's say, 23 fantasy points, but it's projected for like 2% ownership, I'd much rather play him over somebody who's projected for 25 or 26 fantasy points at 10x the ownership in an earlier time slot. That's really how I'm approaching this slate.
Yeah, no, you're dead on. And I'm actually, again, this is one of my favorite, this is turning into my favorite slate as we talked about it. I absolutely despise this slate as we were getting into it. I just actually entered some more stuff on FanDuel because I thought it was just really fun as we're talking through the strategy of it. What do you think about this? I say we just go like team by team in the early window and talk about players that we're not willing to completely part with. Like I'm playing 210 lineups over on DK. Why don't we just go through that and be like, all right, this is a player that I think we should have a little bit of exposure to. Now, I'm very rarely going to say that I'm going to be overweight to any of these guys. I think LaMelo Ball is the only guy from the early wave that I'm actually overweight to, besides maybe Darius Baisley. And that's a big if. I mean, he's got to be starting at the 5 with no favors. And I think that that's a big if. But let's go team by team. I think that that's a little bit better use of everybody's time.
I agree. And by the way, I think as we get into this, we also do have a question from Blitz, our old friend Blitz. We haven't heard from her in a minute.
Yeah.
Buddies, would you fade Murray or Rosen, which I think is a really good way to kind of kickstart this conversation? Given the way I have my lineup set up, I am not really getting to either of them. I just have other guys. So here are my most rostered players right now, Eric. Just keeping in mind how I built my lineups out and how I said I just took everybody who's questionable out. Before we go position by position, who would you guess right now are my most rostered players on this slate? If I took everybody who's questionable out.
Jalen Noel.
Yes.
Rashawn Holmes.
No, because he's also questionable.
Oh, okay. This is fascinating. Let's go with,
never mind. He's
all the
my
guys
bad.
are questionable.
He's
are we going to, the Lakers situation is bonkers if you're going to take everybody who's questionable out.
Yeah. So by the way, I misspoke. Actually, he's been removed from the injury report, Rashawn Holmes. But either way, not one of, because I have people who are projected similarly to Rashawn Holmes, but are just a lot cheaper than 5K.
Okay. Let's go with Anthony Simons.
Nope.
Okay. Jalen Noel, Karl Anthony Towns.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I'm just going team by team and kind of doing the around the board, around the horn. De'Aaron Fox.
No, not by the way, De'Aaron Fox, we should never was injured.
Never.
I'm totally sold on that conspiracy theory. I posted that in our group chat yesterday. As soon as we saw he didn't have a minutes restriction, I was like, oh, that ankle injury is so bogus. What player has an ankle injury, doesn't play for a month, has no minutes restriction, comes back, looks terrific, usage rate over 30%, 36 minutes, no issue. They were unsure if they wanted to trade Fox or Halliburton. They saw what they thought was a good opportunity to trade Halliburton, when I think they were probably leaning towards trading Fox. In fact, if you saw the story today, the Kings promised Halliburton 2 days ago that they were not going to trade him, promised him that he was not in trade consideration, and then they trade him. So he was really devastated. But the plan, I'm almost positive, the plan was to trade De'Aaron Fox. They were holding him out with a bogus ankle injury. Then they trade Halliburton. They bring Fox back. He looked totally fine yesterday. But that aside, Fox isn't one of them. I'll just Anthony Davis and Malik
Anthony
Beasley.
Davis. Okay, there you go. I was going to say, because I would assume AD in the absence of Westbrook and James would be your flat out highest owned guy.
So it's just so hard to avoid Anthony Davis in a situation where there'd be no, LeBron or Westbrook.
Right.
And then the other thing also is this then sets up as a situation where, just like yesterday, a million value plays, and also Towns and Davis, neither of them are that cheap. Not that hard to fit both of them into lineups. So let's do your idea. I really like that. Very sharp idea for Eric. He gets all the credit here. Do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Do it all for Eric, because Eric here steering the ship. But this happens to us a lot. Sometimes I'm the host, but Eric still comes up with the idea. Sometimes vice versa. Eric gets all the credit for this one.
It's a beautiful thing that it's the cohesiveness. That's why we do this shit all the time together, because we're pretty good at it.
Yeah, and people think we hate each other, but Eric might hate me like for 30-second stretches at a time. But he comes around. So let's start by the Spurs. Yep. I don't have exposure to like anybody from the Spurs right now.
I'm at 5% on DeJounte Murray. I think if you're doing this in Cruncher too, if you want to play along at home, play like 5% of DeJounte Murray. I capped everybody else at 1%. I will not have more than 1% of any other player. So, I mean, this is just the quick and easy way. Now, if you're making like 20 lineups into 20 max or something, you have to make some harder cuts than what I'm doing. But I'm going 1% over on DK of everybody from this team and going 5% DeJounte Murray, giving him a double click and moving on.
Yeah, it's just not. Also, the chat has been raging. The Halliburton, Sabonis, like that's all that's going on in chat is people just debating Halliburton, people debating Domantas Sabonis, whoever was that said before. It scrolled really quick. I just saw it briefly. Though. Somebody said that Jordan Poole is better than Tyrese Halliburton. Not qualified to watch basketball anymore.
Wow.
I want the. Larry Nance. Oh, no, it's not Thursday. Book night officially out. He was. Is
it weird that I had to look at Larry Nance's name for like 5 minutes to be like, who does he play?
Dude, here's where I got confused. I see the Larry Nance update. I go, oh, Portland's playing today. That's relevant. I go, oh, no, he's not on. He's not on Portland anymore. It gets confusing. But yeah, Spurs. There's nothing for me to prioritize here. Same goes for Cleveland. This Cleveland situation also a mess right now. Karis LeVert playing, but coming off the bench. Goodwin active. Who knows if he's even going to be in the rotation. Rondo's still there. There's nothing I really want to get to from here either. There's individual guys with upside. Garland, Allen, Mobley, but LeVert's in the picture. He's a really high usage guy. Even if he's going to come off the bench and let's say play like 26 minutes, I have to think he cuts into the other guys. I'm not going to be getting exposure to this first game on the slate.
Who the hell is going to close for Cleveland?
All right, closing lineup for Cleveland. Like
Kevin
when
Love's
they're
been closing of late with LeVert there and Garland there. Who does Kevin Love just get removed from it automatically?
So, Kevin Love typically doesn't close.
He's been closing the last 3 games.
Over Mobley, though. Over Mobley.
Oh, that's true.
Like that's just not a long-term thing they're going to do. It's just been Love's been playing so well as of late, but closing lineup, I'm going to assume, but probably not LeVert today, but going forward, Garland, LeVert in the backcourt, Mobley, Allen in the front court, and then I guess just whoever's playing well amongst, like Okoro, Osman, Dean Wade, whoever else. Like that other spot's kind of, and Markkanen when he comes back from injury would be the other guy. But at least for now, Okoro, Osman, Wade, whichever of those guys is going well.
Yeah, I think FanDuel may be a little different where you get a 7K Evan Mobley, you get a 7,600 Jared Allen. I think getting exposure to both of them makes sense. Kevin Love, 7,400, easy write-off over there. Darius Garland and Karis LeVert, just not a fan of playing them. I don't know what the minutes are going to look like for either one of them here. Garland coming off injury and LeVert, obviously a new addition there. He's 8,700, so he's priced out of the slate anyway. I pretty much am just playing Mobley on DraftKings. I have like 8% of him that I think I'm going to be okay with there. And then Jared Allen, 7,600. I have 2% Kevin Love that I'm going to get to on DK as well. That's, 1/3 of the field. No desire to get to anybody else there, though. I'm looking at just Mobley and Allen getting a little bit on FanDuel, but like legitimately not even close to the field on either.
Yeah, I just don't find it to be here's what I literally just did in Fantasy Cruncher. I deselected the games when I ran my lineup. Deselected the Spurs Cavs game.
I think you're doing it like DeJounte Murray has to be the one guy you throw in because he has the 60-point upside. So if you're playing more than 20 lineups, I want to get a couple shares of DeJounte Murray.
I'd rather here's the issue. I don't want to reduce potential shares to Anthony Davis without LeBron and Westbrook. I don't want to reduce potential shares of Karl Anthony Towns with Edwards and Russell. I'll roll the dice and hope that becomes an available situation for me.
All right. Let's go to Chicago then.
I don't know that it's going to work out, but that's just kind of the way that I'm playing. We have some super chats to hit on, so we'll answer these. All right, super chats. We just got a few of these come through. From CS, I do not get this reference whatsoever. You guys are Balky, Bartakumis, and Larry Appleton. Does that mean anything to you?
No, I mean, maybe there are new porn names or something. That could be it.
Yeah. No, I liked your Tinkler nickname.
Dirk
Do you remember?
Tinkler? Or what was it?
Yeah. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was something
It was
Tinkler.
something like that.
Yeah.
Tyler.
Yeah.
Tyler doesn't even have a reaction. We get no reaction from producer Tyler.
Yeah, and it's part of your history too. You can't just forget your past. I know they say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but it's not true. Like it's not like you get an STD and it doesn't cross state lines. It comes with you. It's part of the deal.
Happened in Venice, California.
DK Singer, DK high dollar single entry in cash lineup. Is it too risky to fade early games altogether? No. Here's the drastic difference between cash and tournaments. Cash, we already know that some of these guys are projecting out really, really well from Charlotte. I'm more inclined to click on ball. So we're talking DK. So I'm looking at FanDuel here right now, but I'm more inclined to say, fire up Oubre, fire up Washington, fire up Ball, fire up Rozier, fire up Miles Bridges. You could legitimately play like 3 or 4 Hornets. But in tournaments, there's no way I'm playing more than 2 in a lineup. I will play and mix and match who those 2 are. But for cash, you don't want to get stuck in the spot where you get all of these pieces of value later that don't come to fruition. You get Sabonis playing, you get everything else going. Whereas we know this game environment, 237 total. And, the only game that rivals that is Minnesota-Sacramento that we're waiting on news from. And it could be great, but also it's hard to make some of the salaries work later on in the evening. This is tournament play, and that's what we're focused on. That's what most people are focused on. But Charlotte, exponentially better team. Kobe White has to be played in cash as much as I don't like him for tournaments. But you have to play a guy like that as well. So I would say for cash games, completely different, but high dollar single entry. If you're playing a field of over 50 people, have at some fun. You can definitely still let it ride a little bit the same way Greg and I are talking about. Yeah, so the 7 p.m. game, you don't have to play anybody. You don't have to play anybody from the 7:30 game either. I'm going to be playing guys from that game. And here's where it's also tricky, though. You shouldn't be viewing cash games and tournaments exactly the same. So that's really the biggest issue I have with the question is what would you do for a high dollar GPP single entry / cash game? You shouldn't be playing the same lineup in both of those.
So we're perfect strangers. News God keeping us alerted of the jokes in chat. That's a new one. I like that. It's from Perfect Strangers, a 1986 sitcom, 8 seasons. These 2 guys look just content as all heck together. There's no doubt about it.
Let's see. Let me look. Can Tyler pull that up on screen?
Yeah, that's apparently us. I don't know who's who. I'd have to get a little bit more information on character backstory and things of that nature. But
let me look at these guys and who are these actors?
I don't know who they are. I've never
seen one looks like Chris Collinsworth.
Does a little bit. Bit.
I don't know if that's Balky or Larry, but he looks like Chris Collinsworth.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Perfect Strangers. Huh.
All right,
All right, that is quite the poll of a reference by CS.
Wow,
good job by you.
That's quite the poll by CS, and then it's quite the sleuthing there. The old Google machine for all news god. Appreciate you.
I should have just thought to do a Google search, but I just thought it was some like weird made up names. Michael McKinney, 3 must-have value plays and 2 pay-up options.
I don't know yet. I'm hoping Anthony Davis and Karl Anthony Towns. If you're looking early games, I think pieces of value you should not be passing up. LaMelo Ball would be 1. Kelly Oubre would be 2. I'm going to have exposure to both of those guys quite a bit. I'm thinking if you want to have, again, for tournament's sake, I will say the one piece of value from the late game that I'm pretty certain is going to be a thing here from Minnesota is going to be one of the guards. And so like you could be looking at, D'Angelo Russell, 7K. There's a lot of pivots like at 7K. If you have $300, you can get to Simons. If you need to get to like Golden State, you can get down to Jordan Poole and make other things work. But with multiple roster spots, if you got stuck with somebody, it wouldn't be the worst thing to have it be one of those Minnesota guys absent of the others, because it's very surprising. It would shock me if we got Russell, Beverly, and Edwards all playing today.
Yeah. And so for me, my 2 favorite, and I could only go based on who I have in my lineups right now. Here are my favorite pay-up options: Anthony Davis, Karl Anthony Towns. My favorite value options right now, I guess PJ Washington, if we're including him in that mix, Jalen Noel and Malik Beasley.
Love it.
Beasley 4,100. I know there's been times you've gotten to Beasley. By the way, Beasley's been playing really well as of late.
After playing really bad previous of it, the guy's he is impossible to get a grasp on what's going on with him. And it's so strange too, because the usage has been through the roof the last 2 games, 33.4%, 24.6%. But I will say you can watch it. He's one of those guys that it's like, I don't want to say analysis by paralysis and not go data driven, because that's what we do here. But like, you can tell when Malik Beasley is interested and when he's not. And he has been very, very interested in this 5-game winning streak. Really kind of a strange guy to be a catalyst for this basketball team, but he really matters for Minnesota if they're going to do anything whatsoever come playoff time.
Yeah. 4 games in a row with over 21 fantasy points. Last 3 games, 28, 37, 26. Now I have a situation where there's potentially no Beverly, no D'Lo, no Anthony Edwards. If those guys are out, I'm absolutely going to be getting exposure to Beasley. And here's what I really hope happens today. I hope that people load up on the early games and then we get the injury news to break our way. That's right. If the first game of the slate goes to overtime and then all of the players who are injured end up playing, I am screwed in so many ways. It would just be not fun whatsoever. That's why I'm playing now.
Yeah, this Chicago Charlotte game in terms of like doing this game by game, because again, they did a great job breaking it down game by game, but I think it matters in terms of being able to swap through our lineups. That's just the way this slate sets up. We have that 2-hour gap to really focus on it. So I think just focusing on the players that we can't live without, or how much we should get to them, is more important than saying who we like in the late game. Because I can just tell you, I have no idea yet. No idea.
Yeah, I think that's. I find the first game easier to get away from than Charlotte, Chicago.
Correct.
Like I said, I'm going to have some exposure there, but first game out of my player pool, don't care. Jeff Williams, super chat, playing a single bullet in the DK in the 888, playing LaMelo and Oubre. How do I not play one of Vooch, Levine, or DeRozan? Here's how you don't do it. So if we get a situation, just sorry to hammer home the same points, but if LeBron and Westbrook are out for the Lakers, I would have Anthony Davis projected for I have Anthony Davis projected for so many more fantasy points than Vooch, Levine, or DeRozan. It's Anthony Davis becomes like a 60 fantasy point projection guy. I don't want to have a lineup spot tied up with Vooch, Levine, or DeRozan. That's how I don't do it. Same goes for Karl Anthony Towns. If we get Edwards, Russell, Beverly out, or even just like one of 2 of the Edwards-Russell combination, I just way prefer getting to Karl Anthony Towns against this shorthanded Kings team as opposed to Vooch, Levine, or DeRozan. That's how you don't do it, because there's going to be better plays available later, more likely than not.
Agreed. Great points.
Let's see. Super chat. Are we all caught up on them now? Chat has just been going crazy today because we got people arguing about Halliburton. Then we've also got people who are looking up sitcoms to see who we look like on them. It's a lot to keep up with here. Green check mark. Got a question from him. Thoughts on green check mark? This is, by the way, this slate. Nobody as far as green. Nobody has a green check mark this slate. We don't know who the hell is playing.
See, that's the nice thing. Green check mark is no green check mark means no green check mark. So green check mark.
Yeah, no green check marks at all. It is nothing but questionables. So let's see. Did we just get a piece of injury news? Because somebody just threw something in. Seems like fake to me.
I see nothing.
All right. Yeah, that's what I thought as well. But I wanted to double check and make sure that isn't the case.
I look like Quagmire. No, I don't look like Quagmire. Are you out of your mind?
Let me see. Is one of your arms way bigger than the other ones? Nah. He's
come on.
Yeah. Plus, Quagmire's got that gigantic chin. That's not Eric.
Oh my god.
Oh no.
It's been so long since I've watched Family Guy. I don't even really remember what the characters sound like.
It sounds a little like this from what I remember. Is that good, Tyler?
Is that kind of good?
That doesn't ring a bell, to be honest.
No, good talk.
If it did, I would give you the props for it. And Eric does a lot of pretty strong impressions, but that doesn't sound correct to me.
Everybody definitely Quagmire. Whiteside thoughts. Yeah, sure. Play some Whiteside if he gets starting. Like, shut up, Tyler. Shut up.
What did Tyler say?
Just did the boo thing. It was like very, very quiet in the ear thing. This guy loves his gag sound effects. He just loves it. He just loves his little sound effect that he kind of throws in. It's just his way of staying entertained.
Give us a quack quack. There we go. All right. That's what I need to hear. That's what I needed to lift the spirits a little bit. Yeah, we'll work on the Quagmire. We'll come back. We'll circle back on it. We'll watch some old episodes of Family Guy. I watch South Park still. Family Guy, it's probably been like 8 years since I've watched Family Guy.
It's been a second.
So let's see. Now that we're caught up on the super chats, let's go back to talking about the other two games. So we have
Chicago time.
The Chicago Bulls, the Charlotte Hornets. And this one, here's where it gets tricky. Like you said, cash games, it's going to be hard to fade somebody like a Kobe White. There's no Ayo Dosunmu. He was playing a massive role. He was a really big part in distributing for the Chicago Bulls. I understand the desire to play Kobe White, but I have other guys that I'm projecting much better than him considering the players I've taken out. I am not really getting to Kobe right now. He is 5,100 on DK, project for 25% ownership. FanDuel at 45. I can't avoid him at 4,500 on FanDuel though. Yeah. DK 5,100. I can. FanDuel 37. I can. But what about the Bulls pay up options? Are any of those guys appealing to you?
I think you sprinkle them in under the field. Like that's, I think, what I'm looking at doing right now. Over on DK, we're looking at DeRozan, Vooch, and Levine, and it's just, it's so hard because I feel like these slates where one of them pops off, I'm just never there on any of them, but it's 6 games and we're looking at getting a lot of value later on. I wouldn't want to miss out on 50 from any one of the 3. I think it's pretty likely. So I'm not getting close to 16% on DeRozan. I'm right around 7%. Vooch, I'm below the 11.4%, but just slightly. And Levine might be the one guy that if you wanted to say, I want to take an overweight approach to one of them, 9,100. So he's a little bit cheaper than the other guys, but plays shooting guard. And obviously we have a lot of guards that we might have access to, but in the event all the other guys play, at least he's only at like 7.7%. If he's going to be the lowest owned out of all of them, I mean, last slate, I mean, I tried to get onto a lot of Levine to try to save it. He was like 0.4 or 5% coming off of that injury on like a pretty, I mean, it wasn't like a gigantic slate from what I recall on Monday, but still a pretty large slate comparatively. And like Zach LaVine put up 52.5 and kind of serviced a little bit of, or helped me like salvage a little bit after the Gordon Hayward injury. So like, I think if you wanted to get a little bit overweight to him, I'd actually be okay with it at that number. But the other two guys, as you said, we don't want to miss out on lineup spots getting to some of these other studs. And most of them exist at the power forward center position.
Yeah. And I mean, as we go through talking about potential for some of the spots in the later ones, like we said, I love paying up for Karl Anthony Towns right now. I love paying up for Anthony Davis, and I'd much rather pay up for those guys than somebody like Vucevic right now. And then on the other side of the game, the Charlotte Hornets, I'm still, even with those guys out, I find LaMelo Ball to be a really good option. PJ Washington as well. Terry Rozier to a lesser extent, guys like Oubre, Bridges. We talked about PJ Washington. We talked about LaMelo Ball. But how do you view the guys like Terry Rozier, Kelly Oubre, and Mikal Bridges? Miles Bridges, today.
So Miles Bridges, I was expected like 7,800. He was a guy that in tournaments I've just always had my eye on. We've seen what that upside can be, and you're basically getting him at a discount to LaMelo Ball, or when we had LeBron James as somebody who wasn't questionable in this slate. He has a ceiling comparable to that from time to time, and that's what was really appealing about getting to Miles Bridges. But now right around 21% here. We could be looking at Sacramento completely depleted. Harrison Barnes is a little bit cheaper at 6,600. If you get the absence of all these other guys, there could be another 32 minutes he played yesterday. I think he'd be in line for a little bit more than that in a competitive ball game. Minnesota ran away with it towards the end, missed out on his final rotation. So would have been more closer to that 37, 38 minutes you would expect from him. So I do like him quite a bit comparatively, but I still want to get to some Miles Bridges. So for me, LaMelo Ball, the clear priority, 35% for him, or what is he? 33.3% in our last run. I got to be right around, if not a little bit over on that, just because of the upside. I think sub 9K for a guy who's right around 1.35 is too good. And Kelly Oubre, so long as we see him in that starting lineup, which we should have, in the next half hour show, so you're going to want to stick around. So long as Kelly Oubre is in it, I find him unavoidable as well. Maybe you don't have to play him at 40%. You could be bordering 50% in some stuff, but right around a fantasy point per minute guy, been very, very serviceable in a number of these spots, has massive upside from a shooting perspective. Another unavoidable piece of chalk for me from this team.
Yeah. And I mean, working through the rest of this, I guess those actually are there's the Toronto OKC game, which that's another game I find to be fairly unappealing. Toronto OKC.
It could be more appealing. Again, I don't know what this starting five is going to look like. There's some weird stuff that could happen. And I'm just kind of setting everybody up for it because Pokusevski is back. He got recalled after being in the G League for 2 days or something. Diakite just got released for those who might have missed that. Derek Favors is sitting there at 3,300. That's really, really cheap. If he starts alongside Bazley, Pokusevski's going to be backing him up. I don't know what those minutes could look like, but there's an outside chance that Pokusevski starts here, and 3,600 would be somebody that I would get to. Obviously, I'm going to have a zillion roster spots. I wouldn't want to be locking him in. There's a lot of minutes uncertainty there, but I wouldn't put it past them. He's had 2 starts in the month of January. We saw him start on the 2nd and the 5th. They were completely depleted down to 9 guys, so I don't want to read too much into it, but not something that's completely far off for Oklahoma City to do something weird with that starting lineup. So I'm at least going to have that in the back of my mind and be aware of that. There's no way that I'm going to play a guy like Favors at 20% with all the news we have later to come. I want to have a lot of spend ups at center. I'll go cheaper at a lot of the guard and forward positions in the late night hammer. But Favors, if he did start alongside Bazley, play him 24 minutes, maybe he's a guy you get a little bit of, but not 20% of the field.
Yeah. So for me, just once again, the way I have some of this, just the minutes allocated to players, I just don't have interest in OKC because value in the later games is just so much better. I think OKC is going to run a really deep rotation today because they've got, there's Dort, there's Bazley, Giddey, Williams, Trey Mann, Ty Jerome. Favors is playing today. He had missed some time recently. I think Favors starts at center. Pokusevski, Teo Maledon, Paul Watson can get minutes. There's a lot of dudes here, and I think the most likely outcome is, by the way, Giddey also is playing somewhat limited minutes now. That's going to be, we'll see if they hold to that. At least they've said they're going to try to cap him at 30 minutes for the time being. So I think Dort and Bazley are both going to play pretty significant minutes. I'm not sure anybody else on the team plays over 30 though.
Yeah, I will say, Pokusevski's starting at that price tag over on DK, which again, outside chance. I'm really not putting it past him. Favors is a vet. He's not a guy that needs to prove anything before a deadline if they're going to move him or if they're not. I really have no idea. OKC, we know what they're doing. They're stockpiling draft picks. They're just doing the absolute Sam Presti playbook, which is, compile 15 draft picks for the next 2-3 years and try to hit on a third of them, and then you're just in a fantastic spot. But OKC, as it stands right now, Giddey was a fantastic pickup for them, but I don't see any reason that they want to go nuts with him. They flat out, didn't they just actually say that they were flat out not going to play him over 30 minutes or 32 minutes going forward?
Yeah, that was what I was saying before. Is they said they're going to cap? They said they're going to cap him at 30.
Yeah.
I projected him. I projected him for 30. I have to see it to really believe it because you know what I like to say. Coaches, dirty, filthy liars. They don't tell us all the information. But what is OKC playing for at this point? Why not limit his minutes? He's been playing such a heavy workload as of late. Try to make sure they keep him healthy. So I gave him 30. He's been a guy who we've rostered a whole bunch of recently, particularly on FanDuel, where he's had just absurd price points. But it's 7K likely playing limited minutes, or at least supposedly playing limited minutes. I just can't have interest in Josh Giddey.
With you.
All right. The Toronto side now. Talking about them. Actually, first, the slate locks in 7 minutes. Eric and I are not going to be going anywhere, though. We're going to be sticking around talking about prize picks. We're going to talk about Odd Chopper, some of our favorite prop plays for the slate. If you guys want to sign up at Prize Picks, we have a great deal that you should be taking advantage of. Use the promo code Awesemo, get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit, and you also get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. And Eric and I are going to be walking you through some Prize Picks later on in about 10 minutes after the slate locks, where we'll go through, find some of our favorite plays there, but also anything else that happens in terms of players getting ruled out, lineup news. We'll obviously be hitting on that as well. So stick around for that. Super chat here. Right. I apologize if this is a big no-no, but I'm unable to listen. Could the chat list some of their favorite value plays on the slate? Thanks, everyone. Go for it. Right wants everybody in chat to list their favorite value play. So let's do it. Everybody at once in chat.
Oh, I was going to write it on a pad.
No. I want everybody in chat to write. You can write in chat too. This is how A-Right wants his value plays. Everybody in chat types them at the exact same time. By the way, chat also, and of course, the first 2 answers are Larry Bird and Dikembe Mutombo. Here's chat today has been totally insane. So, because chat is people, because we have a lot of people saying like, oh, Sabonis is playing, Sabonis is out, hard is it? And so much of it has just been, fake news that's impossible for me to, but now chat is just absolutely going berserk. So there we go. Right. I hope that's helping you build your lineup.
Kobe, you guys are great people.
It is so difficult to keep up with just everybody who's spreading just made up news. Just don't do it. Don't be an asshole. Right. If we get news, we got news guy, the best news guy in the industry. He's going to be telling us when news happens and we'll be giving it out. There's no reason to make stuff out. You're not helping anybody. All right, let's give him some more actionable information because it appears there's a chance he won't be able to keep up with everything in chat that was just written. Maybe.
I can't keep up with everything that was just written. That was
your favorite value play. If you're only picking one on the slate, Eric, who would it be?
Oh man, I mean, taking such a leap. God, if I just had to pick one, as it stands right now, it would be Kelly Oubre, but I don't want to, I want to get more exposure to late stuff. So I will say, yeah, this is the contrarian take. Let's go McLaughlin. Let's go Sarah McLaughlin there from the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Jalen Noel for me. Okay. Yeah. Jalen Noel for me. I really think that's somebody who's going to benefit a whole bunch of these guys get ruled out. So agreed. He's in the majority of my lineups right now. We'll see what the starting lineup looks like. If McLaughlin's starting, easy enough. Just to get to more McLaughlin. Who knows? They could both start in the backcourt too, considering the players.
That would be fun.
It's possible because if we get Edwards, Russell, Beverly, Prince, Reed, Okogie all out, the guards available for the Minnesota Timberwolves in that situation, we have Beasley, McLaughlin, Noel, and Bolmaro. That's it. Only those 4 guys. So we could very well see both of them start in the backcourt together. We'll see how the injuries shake out. We'll see.
Henry Ruggs. Yeah, there you go. Guys, I'm not on PGA Live Before Lock. I switched with Jason this week, but you want to check out PGA Live Before Lock, Talking the Waste Management. One of my favorite tournaments. A lot of people talk about it being one where the PGA Tour season really gets going. For me, that's Torrey Pines because, they come back over from Hawaii and hanging out over there. But the money counts the same. So anybody who wins over there, congratulations to them. But really looking forward to this. It's one of my favorite things. Always a good prequel for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And so does that run that competes with the Super Bowl then?
Yeah. So it happens before. Cause the Super Bowl is always evening, but it's always like the prequel for it. It's the zero waste golf tournament. So they literally have like zero emissions, zero waste for the entire tournament. It's really, really incredible. And, they get 25,000 people in that amphitheater off number 16 per day. It is such a rocking environment. The only place you can go where you can go boo a golfer and like adamantly let them know that they suck when they miss a green is on number 16 at TPC Scottsdale. So it makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's I remember now you mentioned it. I remember Matsuyama won like 6 years ago or something, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember being at a Super Bowl party and a bunch of my friends were really drunk and they all had bets on Matsuyama and he won and they were all like elated.
I had
for the
Ricky
rest of the
Fowler,
night.
of course, in that
It was.
playoff.
I think it actually might have been the same. Was that the same as when the Broncos won the Super Bowl? Maybe.
I can't remember. I mean, there's a lot of vivid ones. Last year, I had a ticket on just about everybody on the top end, and frickin' Brooks Koepka, who I didn't have, ended up shooting like 64 the final round, came out of nowhere. I had such a deep flyer. I was so high on Scotty Scheffler, like in the early goings of his career here, and he's really kind of taken off, but he kind of fell apart, shot like 70 that last round, and Brooks Koepka just went nuclear. It was terrible.
All right, back to basketball. Super chat from Brad Byard, B-I-A-R-D, Brad Byard.
Sounds right.
Look for Bigglesworth 06 on FanDuel tonight, Eric. Gonna take you down, brother. Thanks for the great content as always, guys. Well, this guy is coming for your head. Bigglesworth 06 on FanDuel tonight. All right, I'll be looking up though, because he better be near the top of the leaderboards. Bigglesworth 06. Keep an eye on that, chat. That's the guy who's going.
Should we have the
to,
Eric Lindquist 100% play of the day? Is that what we should be doing?
Ooh, I think you should. Is there a filter we could put on you for it?
I don't know. We could try to figure out what that would be. Let me do some stuff. Obviously, we don't have much of this early game, so it doesn't matter yet. I think it's going to still be applicable. Oh, I know what I'm looking for. Because if I had to lock a guy today that would be contrarian, it would be this guy. Because it's the same thing as Joel Embiid last time. Come on, there has to be this thing. All right. This is close. We'll see if people can get it. What's the Fox say? A little bit of De'Aaron Fox. They're dirty liars, absolute dirty liars in Sacramento. They trade Tyrese Halliburton after guaranteeing my boy for my Cyclones, my Iowa State Cyclone boy himself. They guarantee that he's not going anywhere. And sure enough, he gets shipped off to parts unknown. And now, regardless of Sabonis here, De'Aaron Fox is going to be a guy who plays big minutes for this team going forward. Sacramento's obviously trying to win now. Whether or not they can or not is a discussion, but 7,700 over on DK. If there's no Sabonis as well, if you're on FanDuel, you're looking at this dude being at freaking what? 8,100. I don't care about that. He played 35 minutes, went back to his normal stuff last night. It got a little out of hand. None of those starters played towards the end. I don't know. Like, I love our minutes projection. I think we have the best in the industry. We have him projected for 38 minutes tonight. And I think there's like 40-minute upside for him going forward. Davion Mitchell, rookie guy that they're going to be playing a lot of. If you're going to play one dude 100%, that you just like off the wall, no matter how the news breaks out, De'Aaron Fox, fire it up.
Did you just like fail preschool and not know what your animals are?
I can't find Fox.
So here's the issue. That on. I'm like, when you put that on, I'm like, oh, clearly he's going with Cat. He's going with Karl Anthony Towns because he put on the Cat. Like to me, I look at this and it's like, oh, look, I like Karl Anthony. My lock of the day is Karl Anthony Towns. Look at me. Look at me. I'm a cat now. I'm a cat. Like Eric, you got to know your animals a little. You got to know your animals a little bit better.
All right, you being a shark? What are you doing over there?
No, that was clearly a cat.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but by the way,
so that was you're trolling me of a shark for a cat analogy.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing:
Next
is
level.
But when you put that on, I was like, oh, he picked a lion. He's going to go with Karl Anthony Towns.
I don't know, but we did get Kobe White starting news, so we should maybe touch on that.
I mean, that was. I just assumed he was going to start.
I assumed he did too, but I just wanted to at least bring it up one more time.
Bulls starting lineup: Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Javonte Green, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic. Here's how we're going to approach this. Let's go over to Prize Picks.
Love it.
Let's see what kind of props we've got for Kobe White and the Chicago Bulls. And don't forget, guys, if you're signing up at Prize Picks for the first time, use the promo code Awesemo. Get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit, and you'll just get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Let's see what we have here for the Bulls. Looks like there are no Kobe White points props. Nothing for fantasy score. All right. So how about
Javonte Green made 2.5 for him for Kobe White?
What was that?
2.5 3-pointers made for Kobe White. I mean, he's going to be out there playing a higher allotment in minutes than normal.
It's a lot of threes.
It's a lot of threes, though, 2.5.
Let me see. Where do I have him at here? Maybe I like the under on that number.
Kind of was thinking about it.
Nah, it's a fair number. I would stay away from that. But Javonte Green was also named a starter. Let's see. 9 points over under. Let me see if that's anything that's appealing to me.
I like how Tyler could filter that out so quickly. Well done, Tyler. It's like you put the name in the box and then it comes up. That's a genius idea.
Well,
I know.
I don't watch. I don't watch the thing, so I don't know what he did. But I have to say, I always have to give him props for this. The Photoshop. I don't even know if you call it Photoshop. The editing job of the picture over my shoulder. It is absolutely tremendous. I don't know how he does that. Nor does anybody. He might even do it with magic, for all we know. Like, Tyler's mysterious. He might be doing magic in his dark room. And I'm actually not sure he's in a bedroom. He might be in purgatory right now. I think that is not out of the question.
Honestly, he might be. He might be.
And yeah, I think he's just doing some spells that changed what the pictures. Yeah, spells, most likely. All right. So I don't really think there's too much to see here from prize picks from a Bulls perspective, but let's just open it up. Eric, go over to Odd Shopper. And if you guys haven't visited Odd Shopper yet, you got to check out this part of the site we've got over at Awesemo.com, because Odd Shopper, it's a free tool to use, and it's based on our NBA projections. We've got projected odds for players hitting prop bets. We've got projected ROIs on all those numbers if something, has a VIG or is juiced or is plus money. So it's a really, really useful way to identify just overall the best props to bet, and then also what are the best just overall plays on prize picks. You look at the percentage odds of things hitting, compare them to the numbers over a prize pick. So let's check that out. What are some of the best prop plays of the entire slate?
Pull it up here. Sorry, I was responding to something in chat there because, yes, Kobe White is going to see a dip in usage with Zach LaVine, with DeMar DeRozan, with Vooch all on the floor, but he sees an increase in minutes. So it kind of evens itself out. Definitely will take the more minutes upside there because if he gets hot, he gets hot. In that kind of regard, looks like with the addition, so we've added blocks, we've added blocks and steals to the grouping here. Gary Trent, the over on 0.5 blocks plus 350 at a 0.4 block projection. Now, sure, it's not going to hit every single time. It's going to lose actually at a 64% clip according to our projections, but at plus 350, that's different. Now, that doesn't always carry over to prize picks. I want to let that be known because, blocks and steals, you only have 3 guys that are kind of listed there. But I will say, Odd Shopper, there's been a lot of really inefficient numbers when it comes to these blocks and steals. I know Alex Baker had a tweet about it. You want to be checking out this new stuff we have on Odd Shopper because I think it's kind of a new, interesting way to take advantage of some really poor lines at books.
Yeah, so let's see what some of the... Also, we should mention that over on Odd Shopper, we now have points plus. We now have threes. We've got blocks and steals, which are also things that are on prize picks now, which were not at one point. So that is something else to look at here.
Kelly Oubre starting.
Kelly, let's hit on that really quick because I kind of thought that was going to be the case, but I wasn't totally sure what to expect from the Hornets starting lineup. Like if they went big and would have started PJ Washington, that wouldn't have surprised me. Does this change anything for you with how you view the Charlotte Hornets?
No, I was a little bit lower on PJ Washington. I've talked about that the whole show where part of it is power forward center and the positionality of it, where I have more spend ups and cheap guys I want to get to in the later session. And I don't want to play a 35% guy coming off the bench here in this spot, especially where I think in competitive games, which, looking at this one, we should expect it to be competitive. It's only a 1-point spread. We've been seeing Plumlee play a lot more minutes, nearly 30 minutes in a lot of these spots. So PJ Washington, I think he's definitely still going to play his 26 to 28 minutes here in this spot, but I don't really want to be investing in him as though he's going to play 32 automatically here. I just think that might have been a little bit of an outlier last game. He did play 42 minutes in a start though beforehand, but we've seen like 26-19. Obviously there was no Gordon Hayward, and that matters a big amount there. But I don't assume that he's going to be in the closing lineup if Kelly Oubre is playing well, and that just makes him such an easier guy to be low on. But Kelly Oubre, the guy who started the second half there against Toronto, I'm firing him up. Rated around the field, just a little bit underneath it. I find him unavoidable.
Yeah, I am I'm just going to take a couple minutes away from PJ Washington and give him to Kelly Oubre and see how that kind of changes some stuff for me here. I was getting to PJ Washington. I think I still will to some extent, but not quite the same rate I was before. It's not surprising that Kelly Oubre starts. I was really not sure if they were going to start Oubre or Washington.
Interesting. Yeah, I just went off of what they did last game, and that's what they did last game. And it seems like coaches kind of are locked into that. They kind of go back to that starting unit. And I will say it's whatever, like Kelly Oubre or PJ Washington. It matters more for real life basketball from a DFS angle. Still, like it doesn't change that PJ Washington is still going to play a decent allotment of minutes. If you want to play him, he's fine. For me, I'm just kind of waiting for the value later.
Yep, I have 20% PJ Washington. I think that's a reasonable number.
Yeah, I have 16%. So it's good.
So we're right around the same number. My most rostered player on Charlotte, still I think it's going to end up being LaMelo Ball though.
Yep, and that's where I'm at as well. And I mean Oubre, I'm getting closer to that 40% number, but still not quite there.
Yeah, and let me refresh the ownership page and see where we're at on these guys. There's expected to be a whole bunch of ownership to the Charlotte Hornets. Totally reasonable considering the amount of guys that are out for them. But right now, most recent run of ownership. The four most popular projected plays on DK are all from Charlotte. Mm-hmm. Kelly Oubre, LaMelo Ball, PJ Washington, Terry Rozier. That's over on DK. We've got all of those guys projected for 30 plus ownership. Over on FanDuel, the most popular plays, pretty similar situation. Terry Rozier, PJ Washington, LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, Kobe White, and then Kelly Oubre. So we've got on FanDuel 5 players from Charlotte projected for 32% ownership or more. I'm not going to get to that. I don't feel comfortable with it, but I'm not going to be getting to quite those numbers. I'm holding out hope for better value later. Very, very easily I could see this backfiring though.
Yeah, totally. And that's where you have to, what we're doing, we're not telling you who to play on this slate because that's stupid. Like, it really is. I think you play Oubre and Ball, but the field's already there. Really, it's understanding what you're doing with your entire encore of lineups, with your entire ensemble of lineups, and you're making an educated decision to either embrace this entire Chicago and Charlotte game environment and just being way over the field on some of these guys, or whether you're going to be like us and be a little bit more risk averse. I think the reasoning that I'm more inclined to be to inherit the risk here is these guys aren't exactly 3K, whereas we have so much 3K value later. And I think that could be the huge difference maker, like 3 to 5K. We're talking about Oubre at 5,600, Ball at 8,800. We're talking about Rozier 6,900. We're talking about Miles Bridges 7,800. These aren't exactly like the 3 and 4K guys that we would be rostering in bulk if there's no Sabonis. We have Metu, who's 4,200. We have Holmes, he's 5K. Going up against Cat in the same game environment here. Minnesota's 8-point favorites in Sacramento here, but it's a 234.5 total. The game environment's off the chain and those guys are cheaper. So like if the news breaks your way, it doesn't guarantee you anything, but it guarantees that they're going to project out better.
So we do have news here, which I had not seen, and it's a good call by Drew Porcello in chat, because I don't think people have really picked up on this yet. But there is a report out there that Josh Hart is expected to make his Blazers debut today. What do you make of that?
Holy God. I'm going to trim. So there was some crazy take earlier. Now, first of all, Portland did not project well for me on DK, period. Like they just don't. They don't look good whatsoever. Justice Winslow, 4,500. If you get what you got yesterday, 32.25, yes, a little bit better than 6X, but like, I don't think that that's beating down a door that's something that's guaranteed. The difference between him being 3K and 4,500 is drastic. Ben McLemore, 4,300. I was really just not getting there either. I mean, we are talking about a situation where all of these guys just project drastically different. So did you see that report? I'm looking on Twitter for it.
Yeah. I got it.
Confirmed.
And it is, it's from NBC Sports.
Trim all of these guys. I mean, I already wasn't there in like a meaningful way, but like now you should just be outwardly avoiding Portland on this slate outside of Simons.
Yeah.
And Nurkic is fine if you want to take the high upside route, but like Winslow, McLemore, I'm assuming Josh Hart starts. I'm assuming Again, he could come off the bench and play 20 minutes, and that's enough to just destroy Winslow and McLemore for me as it is. So like we were seeing 20 minutes out of Watford. CJ Ellaby played like a career game there, 34 minutes, played really exceptionally well against Orlando yesterday. But like, that's the guy who gets affected the absolute most. Justice Winslow, pretty close to second, maybe. I think because at the 4, he basically is like the Robert Covington now. He's still going to probably start. I think that you're looking at him being a guy that can play alongside Josh Hart. But Josh Hart, one of the better rebounding threes in the entire NBA. He had a rebounding rate comparable to Steven Adams in his time at New Orleans. That's a ridiculous stat. So like Josh Hart is a guy that is definitely going to affect Nurkic, Winslow, all those guys from a rebounding perspective. Simons, I still think, has usage and the ability to go nuts in any spot. So like 7,300, I'm still fine getting there, but I'm just taking Portland off the board now on DK.
We have Sean Hyken, who's pretty well-known, verified source. I wouldn't say this is like a concrete report, but he did say Josh Hart not on the injury report. If a guy just traded was ruled out, he would usually be listed as not with the team or trade pending or something to that effect. So it seems he'll be available to make his debut tonight.
Yeah. Plus Josh Hart is a great fantasy player. Great point. Denzel Lucas there. He's a guy, again, that's because of that rebounding rate. He's not always the most high usage guy. He's really just not, but his rebounding rate is really going to dent a lot of these guys. And when you're talking double upside for the likes of Winslow or specifically Nurkic, that is something that is confirmed #matters.
Yeah. And by the way, for people saying like, oh, Sabonis isn't in the player pool or Hart isn't in the player pool. So it's not because we're considering them as plays, but they have such massive impacts on the other guys on the team. So for instance, and we don't know for sure, the speculation, it seems that Hart is trending towards playing. We don't know that 100% certain, but here's where these news are important. Whether Sabonis plays or not has such a big impact on the other players on the Kings. And the other thing too is, and to get back to something you and I were talking about before the show started, which I said I thought was weird. If these guys are actually not going to play, why have we heard no word about them being ruled out? It's so weird to me. Like, wouldn't we have just known by now? I mean, maybe not, but wouldn't we have known by now for sure if Sabonis wasn't playing, if there was a chance that if he was for sure out, wouldn't they have just told us by now?
Yeah, I think so.
So
but
I
also
think
Sacramento does things to the beat of their own drum, obviously.
Yes. So I think they would like him to play today. They're trying to get him cleared to play, and they're probably not totally sure right now.
Fun slate, guys. Fun slate.
Yep. That's why we don't have exposure to at least why I don't have exposure to this game going on right now. And I have my fingers crossed and hoping for the best, because what else could you do in these situations?
Not a damn thing, Greg Ehrenberg.
Not at all, Eric Lindquist. Let's get back to prize picks. Let's look for some more props. And once again, this does get a little tricky because there's so much unknowns with the situations for later. But which teams are not going to be impacted by the injury stuff? Let's look at Toronto OKC.
Okay.
Right. We know about that team.
Mm-hmm.
What could we do with the Lakers? Nothing. What could we do with Portland? Nothing. What could we do with Minnesota? Nothing. What could we do with the Kings? Nothing. So it sucks, but there's nothing we can do with these spots. We don't know who the hell is playing for these teams. So we don't know what projections look like. There's no props available. Toronto OKC, that game starts in 44 minutes. We know which guys are in or out there. Any appealing looking plays there?
I'm looking right now. Fred VanVleet. What do we have? 19.5 points. I'm going through. I mean, the rebounds, Precious Achiuwa, he's not listed there on prize picks. I'm going back and forth. It just really depends on who's going to be listed over there as well. Usually going to be a lot of the main core guys that you're going to be isolating there. Here we go. 21.5 points for Pascal Siakam. This one makes sense as one I might want to short against OKC. 1, a lot of blowout potential. 2, he's playing massive minutes, but now you have OG Anunoby. Gary Trent's been a flamethrower of late. Scotty Barnes is definitely a useful rookie. We're looking at Fred VanVleet, of course, 21.5. He's projected for 19 over on OddsShopper. That's a 64% win percentage. All we need to be worried about when you're looking at OddsShopper is win percentage, because there's no juice. There's no -110. There's no line that we're looking at. We're looking for the ones that can win the absolute most. I think that's a decent enough line. Shorting 21.5 points for Pascal Siakam, 19 points. I think there's enough room there where that might be a profitable one from the Toronto game.
Yeah, I think that certainly makes sense. And let's see, what are the available numbers on prize picks for just all of these players. Fred VanVleet, 19.5 points. His assists is at 7.5. His rebounds, 4. Yeah, I don't have any. Have we seen any? Let me look at some of the minutes here for Toronto. By the way, are you playing? Because we didn't really hit on Toronto too much in depth. Fred VanVleet's the only one that I really have any kind of exposure to for today as of now.
Yeah, he was the guy that I brought up. I think on both sites where we've just seen such an immense ceiling, and when you get reduced ownership on a guy with the ceiling of Fred VanVleet here, he's sub 10%. He's never going to project out that well, but you have to think of range of outcomes. And a guy who's going to be sub 10% on a 6-game slate like VanVleet, he can go out and put up 60. It's not just happened once or twice this season. It's happened multiple times. Now, it's been in the absence of some of these other guys, but still 50, 55. I think you could definitely have that end up being something that ends up optimal on a slate like this.
Yeah, and once again, the minutes for these guys, they're so substantial in some of these in some of these recent games. And Nick Nurse, like the liar he is, like most coaches, he told us he was going to ease up on the minutes. Oh boy, was that false. So the Pascal Siakam, which I'm trying to remember which day it was. Oh, I actually do remember. So a game against the Charlotte Hornets, he played 39 minutes. Nick Nurse comes out after that game and says, we're going to start cutting back on our core guys' minutes. He thinks they're playing too much. The next 2 games, Pascal Siakam played 43 and 57 minutes.
What an absolute joke. Dude, sometimes the NBA, it's my favorite. Like obviously I played golf in college. I love golf and that's like my first love. But like the NBA, well, actually, no, the NBA was kind of my first love. I mean, it was always basketball and like, I will say it's just crazy when you view it through the lens of a kid when there's no sports betting, no gambling and everything. It's these larger than life figures. It's the sport you enjoy the most. It's all these things. It's crazy how warped your brain gets when you become like somebody who's involved in sports betting, when you become involved in DFS, because it's just like, why can't people just be straightforward about some of this stuff? And I get maybe there's an edge that they think that they have by not reporting certain injuries or by not releasing starting lineups ahead of time, like Pop might do, but like, going back to like the kid days, just play your best dudes on the floor, give them the opportunity, run rotations, be a normal basketball coach, try to win games and see what happens. And it's just so weird that the NBA has become tanking. It's so weird that beat reporters are worried about losing their jobs because they don't want to step on anybody's toes. It's just like at a certain point, play the guys on the floor, critique it properly, move on with your day, have it be the entertainment that it is. It's just so weird that we can't get back to that.
And boy, well, the super chat just rolling in. I don't know what it was about that rant you just went on, but people were like, let's give them money because of all the things Eric is saying right now. super chat from Orion, FanDuel GPP, Kenrich and Towns or Trent, Scotty Barnes / Nurkic. Huh. That's a tough. I love Karl Anthony Towns so much that it's hard for me to not answer him.
I mean, Kenrich Williams
I don't like
had
Kenrich Williams at all.
Game. Like last time out or something? Was that why he's on the radar here? Because Kenrich Williams is fine on FanDuel.
It is
4,400. Oh, it is FanDuel. Okay, 4,400, the number there. I'm okay with that. I have 8% of him. I'm not going nuts with it. That's less than half the field, but really that's because of all the value that's still kind of waiting in the wings there that I'm a little bit lower on it. I get it if you want to get there, but Trent or Scotty plus Nurkic, if Hart is playing, I just ran what I'm assuming is going to be a lot of the numbers that I'm looking at. Nurkic's double-double potential, his rebounding rate might take a substantial drop. You take CJ McCollum, not a good rebounding guard, and you put in Josh Hart. Josh Hart can rebound a basketball. So I'm really kind of worried about just from an upside perspective. There's no like 30-20 incoming or 30-15 incoming for Nurkic in that kind of a spot against the Lakers. Even like I'm a little bit concerned about it.
There's random stuff that happens in chat that I just think is so funny. We've got the green checkmark guy who is just pretending to be MySpace Tom and changed his avatar to MySpace Tom and just pretending that he's like lost trying to find MySpace in here. There's just little dumb things that happen in there that I find really entertaining over the course of the show. But a couple more super chats.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, what was that? I missed it.
You're just like, you're a kid who loves life. Yeah, I mean,
I cannot be happier. Everything is good. Everything is swell, as I would like to say. More super chats. Boatman DFS. Should I go PJ Washington still or Utah center at 4K? I assume he means Azubuike.
I'm assuming he means.
I mean, that's
Utah
PJ
Center 4K.
Washington,
Yeah, Azubuike would be the only one who's at 4K there. Should I go PJ Washington still? I mean, they're completely a ways away. So use that salary somewhere else in your lineup. Unless you're just stacking San Antonio and Cleveland, you have a lot of lineup spots left. I'd renegotiate a lot of things. Azubuike, definitely not a priority for me on this slate.
History buff. Move off of Winslow, McLemore, and Ellaby to whom? I love when we get to see whom. To
anybody else.
I mean, to me, as of right now, well, something else to mention too. That game doesn't start till 10. We legitimately have no clue who's playing in the 10 o'clock games.
No idea.
So to me right now, like I said, my highest priorities are the Minnesota value plays, the guys that could potentially be in the lineup. If Edwards, Russell, Beverly, Okogie, if all those guys rolled out, that to me is going to be the best value situation on the slate. And still, it's speculation. The Hart isn't going to play. It seems that, at least based on what Sean Highkin tweeted, that he's more likely to play than sit, but not necessarily confirmed right now. But that's the priority for me, is the Minnesota cheaper guys.
Yep. Same and also Sacramento. We're waiting on Sabonis. And if Sabonis doesn't play, I want to play all the Met 2. I want to play all of the Rashawn Holmes.
One more super chat. Arcathelza, thoughts. Vooch puts up 60 DK fantasy points in single entry GPP. Under. I think that's the. I think that. I mean, like, he didn't really ask a question.
I've been projected for 42. So that's.
He just said thoughts. Vooch puts up 60. Unlikely to me.
Unfreaking likely.
It's funny how quickly things change. What was it? 2 weeks ago? When there was. Nobody played Vooch for months into the NBA season. Mm-hmm. I get there's been some guys out, but he puts together 2 good games, and all of a sudden everybody wants to jump on Vooch.
Everybody's losing their minds.
Well, so here are the last 5 games for our European friend. 44 fantasy points, fine, not bad, not great. 64, very good. 70, also very good. And then last 2 games, 38, 32. It's funny, man. You get one good fantasy game out of somebody, and then people really want to play him. I think there's better guys to pay up for today.
Greg, I have an important question with 5 minutes left to go. Are you playing any lineups with 3 Charlotte guys? Is that taking up too many spots? Because I feel like it's a hard thing for me to fix with 190 lineups on FanDuel and 212 here on DK, where I'm trying to piece those all together. But I feel like the opportunity cost of missing out on the combination of that game shooting out altogether might not be good. Maybe I'll crunch a portion of them now, allowing 3, and then I'll crunch a portion of them with 2.
I have one lineup that has 3 Charlotte players.
All right, so we're in agreement then that it should be 2.
So it's not like a rule I said. That's just kind of how it worked out.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you quick. Yeah, thank you.
But once again, I want as much flexibility as possible to be able to react to that late news.
You should do yoga then.
What's that?
You should do yoga then.
Hey, yoga. Where's Tyler? Cue up a sound effect. All right, whatever. That was the response it deserved anyway. Let's see.
Flexibility.
We were all I got it. I just didn't enjoy it. Didn't enjoy it whatsoever.
It's the small things.
I want to reiterate the NBA injury reports for today. These are all the players we're waiting on still. Nothing, by the way, we've gotten 0 news since we started. Anything that could have been helpful to us, we didn't get
none.
It. LeBron James, questionable. Sabonis, questionable. Edwards, questionable. D'Angelo Russell, questionable. Russell Westbrook, questionable. We've got Josh Hart, also, I'll consider him questionable. Patrick Beverly, questionable. Looney, questionable. Justin Holiday, questionable. Jeremy Lamb, questionable. Marvin Bagley, questionable. Torian Prince, questionable. Nas Reed, questionable. Josh Okogie, questionable. Dwight Howard, might as well throw him in too, because why not? Are we having fun yet?
Are we? Oh, that's literally, I almost sang a Nickelback song. That would have been the end of me. I said, there's these 5 words in my head screaming, are we having fun yet? That's definitely Nickelback. That would be the worst thing that I've ever done in the history of Live Before Lock.
No, you have to have done worse.
Tyler
you have to
nodding his head.
I mean, it would be. Do you listen to? When's the last time you listened to Nickelback on purpose?
14 years old, 20 years ago.
It does come up
I thought Silver Side Up was a good album. You got to defend me on this. Silver Side Up, I thought was actually decent. And then they went into that Photograph and Rockstar, whatever the heck those two songs were that were on the radio all the time. And it was just pure trash. That is not enjoyable. But like legitimately, I think Silver Side Up was a better album than it. I don't know if many people would argue that it was a bad album.
Yeah, I think you're on a little bit of an island right there. I haven't. Here's the thing. It's like you'll hear Nickelback accidentally sometimes. Because it plays in, like if you're in like a supermarket or something and they got music on, they'll put on like Nickelback. But yeah, not on purpose. I don't listen to it. Let's close with this. We only have like 90 seconds left, but I think this is a pertinent point. Marino for Life 13. What do you guys do if they all get ruled in, meaning the players that are listed as questionable? My honest answer is likely lose money tonight. That's just what happens. I'm taking a gamble here. I'm trying to figure out what is the best upside where I could generate for my lineups with the least amount of ownership. And that was backloading my lineups. If all these guys end up playing, I'm screwed. Yep. That's how it goes. But I don't look at each slate individual. I'm like, oh, I need to be, it's the whole slate over the course of the year. I'm making moves that I think are best for this slate. And there are also so many guys that are listed as questionable for today. I find it unlikely they would all play.
I find it very unlikely too. I'm right with you, Greg Ehrenberg. It comes down to there are slates that you have to understand that you're going to enter it. And there are paths where when you do it right, you get paid off more times as a result of the risk that you incur than what it would be worth. Now, if this were a slate where I'm like waiting on somebody who doesn't matter to be playing, if it's a situation where the value isn't apparent, we need to have a different conversation. I'm probably doing it wrong, but the reward for waiting and not being over-invested to this Chicago and Charlotte game, I think is worth the risk. And that's what we're getting at. There are going to be slates that doesn't pan out, but hopefully in the long run, we're not leading you astray. I still think late swap is the most underutilized thing when it comes to NBA DFS. Therefore, that's what we're going to preach.
You know what's actually the worst thing you did on the show is that you thought a lion was a fox. That's still kind of mind-blowing to me that you weren't able to differentiate between the two of them.
There wasn't a freaking fox filter, Greg Ehrenberg. What am I supposed to do?
You're supposed to go with Karl Anthony Towns, who we both liked anyway.
I love him too.
Yeah, there we go. All right, that's going to do it for us today, guys.
Too popular.
Be abreast of the news. We got to know what's going on here. You got to know. The news is so pertinent on today's slate. I wish we had more of it, but we just didn't. It wasn't something we had at our disposal today. But like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel because tomorrow's slate is also going to be absolute batshit crazy. NBA trade deadline. Josh Engelman is going to be doing a trade deadline show tomorrow afternoon. You guys should be checking out also for tonight. PGA Live Before Lock. Check that out as well. Till then, good luck today, guys. Let's hope the injury chips fall our way.
One time, dealer.